This guy was sleeping so soundly during the exam that he was drooling. Seeing this, the proctor angrily walked over and slammed the desk. Chu Tian, you're still sleeping. Do you want to get kicked out or what? Why haven't you answered any of the questions? Chu Tian sluggishly woke up. Aren't there still 10 minutes left? 10 minutes left? The instructor repeated sarcastically, then began shouting angrily. What do you think you can do in 10 minutes? Every repeat offender I've seen is the biggest failure among students, lazy, and without any financial support for the school. You guys are nothing but pests. Do you seriously think you can finish everything in 10 minutes? Are the answers flying in through the window? After hearing this, Chu Tian couldn't help but chuckle. What if I told you the answers really are outside the window? As soon as he finished speaking, a gust of wind suddenly howled outside, growing louder and louder. A helicopter flew by with confidence, then stopped right outside the window where Chu Tian was sitting. The most surprising part was that the helicopter was trailing a huge banner with large letters, seemingly the answers to the exam. Not only the instructor, but also the other students were completely stunned by the scene. In the meantime, Chu Tian quickly filled out his answer sheet, then reminded his classmates to hurry up and finish their exams too. At that moment, everyone suddenly snapped back to reality and started copying the answers printed on the banner. Chu Tian stood up, casually handed in his exam, and prepared to leave the classroom. His action was almost like a challenge to the exam supervisor, and it drove her absolutely crazy. Nobody is allowed to copy anymore. Anyone caught copying will be considered cheating and will receive a 0. Chu Tian paid no attention and continued to walk out. But suddenly, a pilot's voice shouted from outside, "Hey, I followed the instructions. Where's the money?" Chu Tian called out, then quickly returned to his seat, grabbed the plastic bag he always carried with him, stepped on the windowsill for leverage, and threw the bag straight at the pilot. "Quick, catch the change. That's your tip. Don't worry about giving me the extra back." It was truly shocking. A poor student like Chu Tian had so much money that he could use it to slap a dog to death, and he even kept the cash in a plastic bag. The pilot managed to catch the bag, but the strong wind scattered a large amount of money into the air. Watching the money flutter down from the sky in such a rare sight, Chu Tian finally walked away with his usual carefree attitude. "Teacher, goodbye. I still have to catch my school bus. If I'm late, I won't get a seat." The professor was furious, but there was nothing she could do to stop Chu Tian. She could only watch him leave. After exiting the classroom, Chu Tian paused for a moment. A simulated window appeared in front of him. As expected, this young man, like countless other main characters, had his life changed by accidentally obtaining a system. The mission window displayed that he had completed his beginner's task. The task content was simple. While retaking an exam, he had to spend 150,000 yuan in cash by any means necessary. That's why the shocking scene that just happened caused such a stir in the community of enthusiasts. To understand how Chu Tian came into possession of this money-spending system, we have to go back a week. That day, Chu Tian had just received his paycheck from his part-time job and went to the bank to deposit it. However, the amount he earned in a whole month was pitifully small, so little that even a thief wouldn't bother to steal it. That's what Chu Tian thought, but little did he know he was about to encounter a thief anyway. A gunshot rang out, shattering the bank's glass. Everyone present, including Chu Tian, had to sit still, raise their hands above their heads, and submit to the robber's control. Chu Tian didn't have much money, so he was extra bold. He glanced around, waiting for the right moment when the robbers weren't paying attention, and slipped the last 200 yuan he had left into the pocket at the back of his pants. But he wasn't quick enough, and his move caught the eye of one of the robbers. The cold barrel of his gun was pressed to Chu Tian's head, making him freeze in fear. "What did you just do?" the robber demanded. Chu Tian was terrified, but he knew he had to act confident if he wanted to survive, so he nervously tried to bluff his way out. "My butt itch. Is it a crime to scratch it?" he said, trying to sound casual. "Anyway, a mosquito bite's still a bite. I only have this 200 yuan left, and I'm not letting you take it from me without a fight." The robber, irritated by Chu Tian's attitude, pressed the gun harder against his head. But just as he was about to take action, a scream suddenly rang out, drawing everyone's attention. Taking advantage of the moment when the robber was distracted, Chu Tian quickly ran for it. The scream had come from a woman. It turned out one of the robbers couldn't resist and tried to take advantage of a pretty girl of the group. Although the woman was clearly at a disadvantage, she refused to back down, and the two of them began to struggle fiercely, causing chaos in the bank. "Chen Zilin," the woman shouted, "even if I die, I won't let someone as despicable as you humiliate me." Chu Tian saw his chance, quickly pressed the alarm button, and sneaked out the door. He had planned to escape alone, but just as he was about to leave, he heard the voice of the girl. It was Ms. Chen, the teacher of his class. "Wait," Chu Tian heard her call out, and he immediately felt he couldn't just leave her behind. As the thief was about to make another move, Chu Tian couldn't hold back anymore and stopped. Let her go. If you've got a problem, take it up with me. It was hard to say which hero personality took over Chu Tian at that moment, but whether he would actually be able to save the girl or not was still uncertain. One thing was for sure, though. He had definitely become the new target for the robbers. The leader of the group, the same guy who had pointed a gun at Chu Tian earlier, was furious when he saw Chu Tian make a run for it and even open the door. He raised his gun again. Let's talk this out calmly. Shouting hit and kill like that isn't going to help anyone. Chu Tian felt like his fear nerve had shut down, and without a hint of hesitation, he responded to the robber. He firmly believed that the thieves being there to rob were unlikely to want to take a life. But life is not as dreamy as it seems, because in response to Chu Tian's words, a sharp gunshot rang out. He widened his eyes as the bullet flew straight toward him. It was 4 p.m., and the bullet pierced through his body, instantly leaving his mind blank and in a state of shock. He couldn't believe it and never imagined that he would die like this. No matter how poor he was, Chu Tian still loved life deeply. At least he had 200 yuan saved up, money he had worked so hard to earn. He hadn't even spent it yet, so how could he peacefully close his eyes without enjoying that hard-earned money? Right at that moment, the system appeared and gave Chu Tian his first task: spend 1 million yuan within 3 minutes. The reward for completing the task was immunity from death and the ability to fully understand how to use the system to spend money. At first, Chu Tian thought the simulation window in front of him was just an illusion of someone about to die, but then something truly strange happened. Chu Tian opened his eyes again, and in front of him was a thief with a gun pointed right at his forehead. He glanced at his watch. It was only 3:57, so he had really gone back 3 minutes in time. That thing earlier wasn't an illusion. In order to stay alive, he had to spend 1 million yuan within those 3 minutes. If heaven had given him this chance, then Chu Tian was determined to make the most of it. Get out here! What are you looking around for? If you keep staring, I'll shoot you in the head, the thief yelled angrily. Chu Tian, frustrated, thought, what's with all the threats? Didn't he just shoot me earlier? But, as luck would have it, in this situation, the jerk in front of him could actually help him complete the system's task. So Chu Tian pointed at the guy with curly hair who had just tried to harass the girl earlier and then nervously stammered, "It was that guy who dropped the money. I just wanted to remind him about it." The guy was suddenly pulled in and looked at him with a clear question on his face. What money? His boss demanded that Chu Tian clarify. So under the threat of the gun, Chu Tian slowly stood up, walked over to the curly-haired guy, and as he passed by the beautiful girl, he even winked to her on purpose. "Hey, pig guy, the money on your lap has fallen out." As he spoke, he pointed to the ground. The curly-haired thug looked down and noticed, to his surprise, that a few coins had spilled from his pants, which he hadn't even realized. His boss was clearly shocked, and Chu Tian took advantage of this moment to continue sowing division. "Well, I think even though you guys have money pouches, this poor guy only has his pants to hide the cash," he said. This remark implied that the curly-haired guy was keeping some money for himself. Worried his boss might misunderstand, the thug quickly tried to explain that he had nothing to do with the money. Chu Tian couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction inside, and he kept adding fuel to the fire with a few more words. "Even if you stuff your pants full, it's only a few thousand yuan. Without a pouch, it's so inconvenient. How about I help you find a bag?" Now, not only the leader, but all the other thieves turned to look at the curly-haired guy with eyes full of hatred. Taking advantage of the moment, Chu Tian walked over to Chen Zilin, gently helping her to her feet. He said, "I just wanted to kindly remind you. Besides that guy, there's another one of your underlings hiding money, and he also has an accomplice. This girl here." Then he wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled out a wad of cash. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Tian smoothly took the stack of money from behind her, casually framing the thief in the green shirt who was standing nearby. This was the surprising ability he had just gained from the spending money like water system. The first rule of use: money can appear at any location the user specifies, and the amount of money is also up to the user. That's how Chu Tian was able to make the money fall from that guy's feet earlier and take cash from behind this girl's back. His trick really worked. Even though the thieves were wrongly accused, they had no way to explain themselves. Their boss, however, was furious. "You guys are already a mess as it is, and now you want to go and make things worse for yourselves." His attitude was incredibly harsh, but instead of intimidating his subordinates, it only backfired. They felt wronged and more frustrated when their leader refused to believe them. But it wasn't hard to understand the boss's doubt. After all, who could believe that someone like Chu Tian could actually pull money out of thin air? When he pulled out his gun and aimed it at his own men, Chu Tian knew he was about to cause another big scene. "Boss, you're wrong," Chu Tian said. "Team members need to trust each other. But you're hiding money right there on the ground." With that, he pointed to a nearby plant pot. The thieves followed his gesture and saw several stacks of money scattered behind the pot. This only deepened the conflict within the group of robbers. The boss immediately fired the first shot. The others, desperate to protect their lives, fired back in response. Chu Tian quickly pulled Chen Zilin close, shielding her with his body to avoid the bullets. About 2 minutes later, most of the robbers were down. The clock showed 3:59 and Chu Tian started to panic. He still hadn't spent all 1 million yuan. Just as he was looking around, the cold barrel of a gun pointed directly at his head once again. The leader of the group, the one in charge, was still alive. Moreover, he believed that the whole situation was orchestrated by Chu Tian, so he wanted to take revenge by ending the life of this kid. Seeing the barrel of the gun pointed straight at her student's head, Chen Zilin's protective motherly instinct suddenly kicked in, and she rushed forward to shield him with her own body. His finger was already on the trigger. Chen Zilin took a deep breath, feeling that after a lifetime of being a teacher, this moment would be enough. To sacrifice herself and take a bullet for her student, she would consider that a noble act. But after a long moment, she still didn't feel any pain. In fact, not only the robber, but everyone else in the bank looked completely stunned. Chen Zilin was confused for a few seconds. Then, by instinct, she looked down at her stomach, and what she saw truly shocked her. The robber had pulled the trigger and his gun wasn't out of ammo, but the bullet had been stopped by a thick stack of bills piled up in front of her. Now the robber could see it clearly. This pile of money had appeared almost like a ghostly apparition. He was sure it was some trick by Chu Tian, but still, it was so unreal. The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. If it weren't for Chu Tian, his gang wouldn't be in this situation, with some alive and others dead. Thinking about it, he raised his gun again, unable to believe that he hadn't managed to shoot through that stack of bills. But this time, just as he pulled the trigger, the gun somehow exploded. The robber, who was closest to the weapon, was immediately blinded by the blast. He clutched his face with both hands, screaming in pain, blood pouring from his eye sockets. Chu Tian, with a calm voice, said, "If you do evil, you must face the consequences." But in reality, that was also his doing. He had turned money into the gun, and the more money there was, the greater the pressure. Eventually, the gun couldn't take it anymore and exploded. Heh, serves him right, Chu Tian thought to himself. Chu Tian, before you're too shocked or panicked, could you take your hand off me? Chen Zilin suddenly spoke up. It was then that Chu Tian realized what had happened. He had been so tense that he accidentally touched the wrong place. Quickly, he pulled his hand back, giving a silly, innocent apology to Chen Zilin. But honestly, the soft sensation he had just felt was really something else. Now that the life-threatening situation was over, since he had taken care of the entire gang, Chu Tian, in his moment of free time, couldn't resist reaching out to touch the money he had just created. But just as his hand reached out, the stack of money disappeared. It seemed the system wasn't trying to deceive him. He couldn't take that money. At that moment, the bank door swung open again, but this time the people entering were police officers. Their job was almost done because the group of robbers had already been taken down. Seeing that the authorities had arrived, Chu Tian knew he had no reason to stay. If he lingered any longer, he'd probably be late for work. However, as he reached the door, a female officer spotted 200 yuan in his pocket. She immediately assumed it was evidence he had hidden during the chaos and shouted, "Hey, you, stop!" The next morning, Chen Zilin went to teach as usual. Chu Tian also went to school and continued to doze off in class like he always did. Even though Chu Tian had saved Chen Zilin's life the day before today, she was still scolding him like normal. During class, as he wasn't paying attention, the teacher asked, "Do you want to graduate or not?" Chu Tian groggily woke up, scratched his head, and smiled awkwardly. He didn't mean to fall asleep. I must have been tired from working yesterday. Chu Tian kept getting reminded for dozing off in class, and on top of that, he even snapped back at the popular professor Chen Zilin, which really annoyed some of the other students. Among them was a guy named Jiang Hao, who clearly came from money and was often called Brother Hao. They all thought for sure that Chu Tian would be kicked out of class. Chen Zilin had actually planned to punish him, but when she remembered that Chu Tian had saved her the day before, she decided to let it go. Seeing him handle the situation so easily only made Jiang Hao and his friends even more irritated, though there was nothing they could do about it. Feeling frustrated, Jiang Hao pulled out his phone and started scrolling through social media. To his surprise, he saw a headline featuring Chu Tian. The news story was about a bank robbery that happened the day before, and Chu Tian was being praised as the quick-thinking university student who caught the robber. It wasn't just Jiang Hao. Many of the other students in the class had seen the news too. So, by the time break came around, a group of attractive girls surrounded Chu Tian, asking him all about what happened the day before. This was a first, since they always looked down on him for being poor. Seeing the girls crowding around Chu Tian, the guys who didn't like him were even more jealous. Jiang Hao saw this as the perfect chance to embarrass him. Chu Tian, now that you're famous, you should treat the whole class to a meal, right? Yeah, exactly. How else are you going to show off your celebrity status as the famous Chu Tian of our class? A few others chimed in, egging him on. The group of girls surrounding Chu Tian nodded enthusiastically. Even though they didn't mean to corner him, they were indirectly helping Jiang Hao push him into a tough spot. However, while they were busy laughing and chatting, Chu Tian had already slipped away. It's not easy to make him spend money, especially since he didn't have any to begin with. Chu Tian quietly snuck out of the classroom, but suddenly a ringtone went off like a phone notification. And so, as Jiang Hao continued mocking him, calling him a poor, clueless guy who wanted to be famous, Chu Tian confidently returned and patted his back. Let's go to the cafeteria. Today, I'm treating the whole class to lunch. What? Jiang Hao couldn't believe his ears. He asked again, the cafeteria food. Chu Tian nodded firmly and said, I'm treating the whole class to cafeteria food today. Jiang Hao's followers couldn't help but burst into laughter, mocking Chu Tian as a poor guy who could only afford school cafeteria food. But on the other hand, Chu Tian replied with complete confidence, since I'm treating, of course, I get to choose where we eat. With that, he waved his hand generously, calling everyone to gather in the cafeteria, saying they could even bring along their friends if they wanted. After the broadcast, Chu Tian had already won the favor of the girls in his class. Now, with this show of generosity, he was once again met with enthusiastic support from them. The cafeteria food is decent. I've been wanting to try the stir-fried watermelon rind with mango there for a while. It may not be as good as a restaurant, but at least it'll fill us up, they said eagerly. Jiang Hao kept mocking Chu Tian, but Chu Tian didn't pay him any attention and turned to walk away. Seeing that he couldn't embarrass him, Jiang Hao got annoyed and had his underlings call as many people as possible to come. Today, I'm going to make sure I clean out Chu Tian's pockets, he thought to himself. The news that Chu Tian was treating the entire class to a meal was a huge shock. Some people even heard that he was treating the whole school. It was truly shocking because Chu Tian had always been known for being stingy. He would only ever eat plain rice in the cafeteria, never spending much. As everyone was gathering and waiting for the meal, a group of tall, strong men suddenly walked in. They all wore a badge on their shirts that read Jiang Hao Restaurant. It turned out they were a team of chefs. Then Jiang Hao and Xiao Sai appeared in the middle of the chefs group and announced, I'm in a good mood today, so I'm treating everyone to a meal. But the meal, prepared by his chefs, was 5-star quality, far outclassing the simple food that Chu Tian had planned to serve his classmates. The cooking process took place in an open kitchen. The group of students were already wide-eyed just from watching and smelling the food. Wow, this is so fancy, definitely way better than the cafeteria food, they marveled. It was clear that Jiang Hao was trying to pressure Chu Tian into embarrassing himself in front of the entire class. His followers were perfectly in sync, playing along and adding, Our Hao is really generous, treating us to dishes that regular students like us can't afford. It was nothing like what some people did, pretending to be generous, but in reality being stingy. As they spoke, their eyes were full of provocation, staring directly at Chu Tian. Even the beautiful girls who supported him were starting to waver. They also wanted to try something from Jiang Hao's kitchen before going to eat with Chu Tian later. It was easy for people's hearts to be swayed by flashy things. Chu Tian just smiled and shook his head. In today's world, spending money wasn't always easy. At that moment, his phone rang. Sorry, Mr. Lin, the wind is really strong today. A voice came through the phone, slightly breaking up. After receiving the call, Chu Tian let out a sigh of relief. Although it's a bit late, I'm glad you could make it. Seeing Chu Tian answer the phone with that expression, the group of Jiang Hao's followers stared, curiosity written all over their faces. The answer to their question came quickly, when several hot air balloons suddenly appeared in the sky. When the hot air balloons landed, the group of students finally saw clearly what was inside. It turned out the balloons were carrying cabins filled with food. Along with them were several chefs, who looked very professional at a glance. The crowd couldn't stop exclaiming, alternating between whoa and wow, amazed by the scale of it all. They immediately thought that Jiang Hao must have planned something big for today. They assumed he had ordered extra food to be brought in just in case the food trucks weren't enough. Even Jiang Hao's followers believed that this was his idea. Of course, Jiang Hao wasn't responsible for this, but when he saw his second-in-command shouting excitedly, claiming that Jiang Hao was hosting guests today, he naturally assumed that his subordinate had secretly organized this on his own. Not bad, I'll have to promote him to manager soon, Jiang Hao thought to himself. Then, putting on an air of confidence, he headed toward the beautiful blonde woman who had just stepped out of the balloon. He reached out to greet her, but she coldly pushed his hand away. She and the other chefs completely ignored Jiang Hao and went straight to Chu Tian. You're really late, Chu Tian began to complain. I told you money isn't an issue. I can double it if needed. The blonde woman, who had been so cold toward Jiang Hao, now bowed respectfully in front of Chu Tian and apologized for keeping him waiting. She introduced herself as Cecilia, the butler for this event. Chu Tian didn't mind and just told them to hurry up and prepare the food. He was starving, and not just him. Everyone was. The situation took an unexpected turn. The professional chef team, including the butler, was actually not invited by Jiang Hao. The students started gossiping, speculating that Chu Tian was actually a hidden rich kid. Although he humbly claimed he was just treating everyone to a meal at the canteen, he had actually rented a hot air balloon to bring in chefs and food. In comparison, Jiang Hao's small food truck couldn't even compete with that. The people who had been sucking up to Jiang Hao earlier now wanted to go back and try the food cooked by Chu Tian's chefs. As a spoiled rich kid who was used to getting his way, Jiang Hao couldn't stand the humiliation. He gritted his teeth in anger and then pointed directly at Chu Tian's face, shouting, "What's so impressive about a hot air balloon? Isn't it the chef who makes the food important?" With that, he started bragging about how the chefs he had hired were world-renowned, even including 5-star chefs. Clearly, no one from Chu Tian's team could compare. But just as he finished speaking, one of the chefs from Jiang Hao's restaurant suddenly rushed in front of Chu Tian's chef team. He nearly dropped to his knees, crying desperately, "Master, please teach me those final moves. I've improved so much now." "Oh, now you're a 5-star chef, huh? You must have learned a few tricks," he said. The chef, who had just been called master by him, calmly replied, "What could just happen prove? It proved that the chef Chu Tian brought in was clearly far superior to Jiang Hao's level. This made him even more furious, and he started yelling at the guy who had just spoken, 'Get back to your position, or I'll fire you right now.' But the guy stuck close to his mentor and said, 'As long as I get to learn from you, I don't mind being fired.' The crowd started buzzing with excitement, which only made Jiang Hao more embarrassed. Chu Tian, however, was enjoying himself, though he was trying to keep a cool demeanor. What's going on? It's so noisy. I'm getting a little hungry," he said. Once the young master spoke, the staff, who were hired like them, dared not make any more noise. They quickly got back to their tasks. And so, in this showdown, Jiang Hao was completely defeated. Watching Chu Tian relax with his legs crossed in the dining area, waiting for his meal to be served, Jiang Hao ground his teeth in frustration. The first dish that arrived was a premium salad. But even though Chu Tian had money now, he still kept his old habit of wanting plain rice. When the salad was placed on the table, Jiang Hao couldn't help but sneer, laughing arrogantly and saying, "It's just some mushy lettuce." However, the girl with Chu Tian, after taking her first bite, couldn't hide her exaggerated reaction of delight. "This salad is unbelievably delicious." Chu Tian looked at the other person, who didn't seem to be exaggerating, but at the end of the day, it was just some greens. He was curious too, so he picked up a bite to try. Before the food even reached his mouth, Cecilia quickly spoke up to explain, "This isn't your regular lettuce. It may look like lettuce, but it's actually made from mushrooms. The stem is a type of black mushroom that costs 1.1 million yuan per kilogram. The leaves are made from expensive white mushrooms, and the veins are made from hazma. Each bite of this lettuce may look small, but it's worth about 30,000 yuan." Chu Tian took a bite, chewed carefully, and then nodded, commenting, "Well, it's good. Definitely better than canteen food." Although this was a genuine compliment, it left Cecilia and the two chefs completely shocked. "Oh my god, we're world-class chefs, and we've made a piece of lettuce worth 30,000 yuan, and you're saying it's just better than canteen food." What made it worse was that Chu Tian looked so calm about it. This led some of the students to speculate that maybe Chu Tian was from a rich family, used to eating high-end delicacies, which is why he preferred the food in the canteen. Before long, the rest of the food was served and everyone had their portion. First, there was the soup made with the technique of blanching the vegetables. Then came the stir-fry, thinly sliced, made with rare white asparagus and mangalica pork. After that, there were the fried eggs with tomatoes served with rice, but in reality, the tomatoes were a special variety of honey tomatoes, and the dish also included belly cuts of fish. At first glance, these dishes might seem simple, like something from a cafeteria, but anyone who tried them had to admit they were absolutely delicious, better than anything at Jiang Hao's place. Some people couldn't help but comment after finishing, "I think this whole Jiang Hao's young master title is just a joke. He can't be as impressive as Chu Tian." Yeah, exactly. Chu Tian is the real wealthy young master, the one you can't even imagine. Each of these words felt like a sharp arrow piercing Jiang Hao's pride, seriously getting him hard. Could it be that Chu Tian really is hiding his wealth? And I know when he keeps losing like this, he couldn't stop muttering to himself. At the end of the meal, Cecilia even served Chu Tian a drink made from water sourced from a snow mountain spring. Then she handed him a card saying that it was the leftover balance from the meal and they wanted to return it to him. But when Chu Tian heard this, he reacted strongly. He slammed his hand down on the table, then stood up abruptly. Refund? The money I spent was never going to be returned. No need for a refund, just consider it a tip. He never had money before, but after getting this system that burns through cash so easily, he's starting to pick up some habits of the rich. Chu Tian's reaction earlier really caught his classmates off guard, but in reality, he was reacting so sharply because if he insisted on getting a refund, his task wouldn't be completed. After finishing the spending task, Chu Tian received a reward, an enhanced lottery machine. Before he could even finish reading the notification, the enhancement lottery process had already begun. Chu Tian just hoped it wouldn't end up enhancing useless things like an appendix. Fortunately, the enhancement turned his eye into a special organ. After the lottery ended, Chu Tian was excited to discover that he now had the ability to see through things. Whether it was Cecilia or any other girl standing in front of him, now it was like they were wearing bikinis. Getting a front row view of a pool party in the school cafeteria like this, Chu Tian almost couldn't help but smile from ear to ear. The system really wasn't holding back on him. This is the kind of life that makes you feel no regrets. At the same time, the female police officer who was at the scene of yesterday's bank robbery had arrived at Chu Tian's school. The case may have ended, but she still felt like something was off, so she decided to come here and meet him in person. After arriving at the school, the young officer noticed a group of boys, each one with a plastic bag tied to their waistband. The odd style looked familiar, so she called them over. "Hold on, guys, police officer here." "Oh, no, it's you. What's up?" You know, women are always sensitive about their age. She had just graduated and seen the boys, who were only a few years younger than her, refer to her as Miss. Her feathers were immediately ruffled. "Miss? What miss? I'm Zhou Weiwei. At least call me sister." Setting that aside, Zhou Weiwei asked them about the strange plastic bag trend. One of the boys quickly answered, saying it was a hot new trend at their school, started by young Master Chu. They even had a meal on him today that they would never forget. Zhou Weiwei paused to think, since they both shared the surname Chu, but this young Master Chu seemed like he was from an influential family. She couldn't possibly be thinking of Chu Tian. That was until Zhou Weiwei saw Chu Tian in the middle of the schoolyard, still surrounded by a group of girls, but his face was completely indifferent. The reason Chu Tian looked so uninterested in the beautiful girls was because the system had just sent him a new notification. The bank robbery, the free meal, and the exam cheating. He had completed all 3 tasks. After that, the system suddenly announced that his learning phase was over. Now it was time for the selection task. There were different difficulty levels with rewards ranging from low to high. But of course, if the task failed, there would be penalties, and the higher the difficulty, the harsher the punishment. Chu Tian was in a dilemma, struggling to decide on the task's difficulty. The group of girls surrounding him was like a bunch of spider spirits, constantly clinging to him. Some even had the nerve to openly flirt with him. "Young Master Chu, I'll be alone in my dorm room tonight." Zhou Weiwei was stunned when she heard this. Could Chu Tian really be the same person as young Master Chu? This couldn't be true. For her investigation, Chu Tian was very poor. He had to work part-time while attending school. And honestly, his appearance didn't seem to match someone who had money. Then a thought suddenly flashed through Zhou Weiwei's mind. Could Chu Tian have gotten rich after the bank robbery? This thought only reinforced her suspicion that he might be connected to the gang of robbers. So Zhou Weiwei quickly followed him, insisting that Chu Tian go with her to the police station to cooperate. At this moment, he was still carefully choosing the difficulty level of the task, so he didn't notice that Zhou Weiwei was calling his name. Originally, he wasn't sure what the penalty for failure was, so Chu Tian was about to pick the easiest difficulty. But right at that moment, Zhou Weiwei suddenly grabbed him, causing him to accidentally select the hardest difficulty level. "Ah, it's over for me now," he sighed dramatically. "Yeah, you're really in trouble now. I need you to come with me to the station." It was then that Chu Tian realized Zhou Weiwei was standing right in front of him, but he didn't have time to go with her. After selecting the difficulty, the system immediately issued the mission. The task was to buy a new vehicle and win a mountain racing competition within 6 hours. The reward was a high-level spin, but the penalty for failure was that Chu Tian would lose his ability to speak. This penalty was serious. Chu Tian kept thinking about it and realized that he really couldn't afford to lose his ability to speak. It was 2 p.m. now, so he had to buy a new car before 8 p.m. Just thinking about it made Chu Tian feel incredibly excited. That much time was probably enough, and now nothing could stop him from spending money. But while he was still running, he suddenly felt weightless as if he were flying. When he regained his senses, he found himself on his back on the ground, pinned down by Zhou Weiwei. However, his officer didn't seem very professional, likely because she had just graduated. It was true that Chu Tian had been knocked down, but she ended up falling too, and worse, she landed on top of him. Chu Tian felt a sharp pain all over her body and for a moment completely forgot about the task of buying the car. Meanwhile, Zhou Weiwei quickly stood up, adjusted her clothes, and took out the handcuffs to tightly secure Chu Tian's hands. Zhou Weiwei declared, "You are temporarily under arrest for assaulting an officer, resisting arrest, and causing a public disturbance." This officer really didn't seem to care about reason, but she was in charge. Chu Tian wasn't sure how to respond, so she reluctantly followed Zhou Weiwei to the station. At the police station, Zhou Weiwei was very serious as she tried to get confession, but no matter how she asked, Chu Tian just kept saying she was being misunderstood. Zhou Weiwei was extremely stubborn. She only wanted to hear the answers she was looking for, so she was ready to stay in the interrogation room with Chu Tian all day if necessary. Chu Tian sincerely pleaded, "Miss Zhou, could you please let me go? If you don't, my mouth might really get sewn shut." Of course, Zhou Weiwei refused, until she received a call from her superior telling her that Chu Tian had someone come to bail him out and he could be released. The person who came to bail him out was Cecilia, who was both a lawyer and a butler. Although Zhou Weiwei was very polite, she couldn't keep Chu Tian at the station any longer. Once Chu Tian was set free, he rushed straight to the nearby shopping mall. But by the time he got there, it was already 6 p.m., and all the car dealerships were closed. Chu Tian felt hopeless. Was he really just going to wait until 8 p.m. to receive his punishment of being silenced? In his confusion, he almost got hit by a bus while crossing the street. The driver suddenly stopped, opened the door, and shouted angrily, "You almost got hit. Don't you want to live?" Chu Tian froze for a moment, then smiled brightly and gave the driver a thumbs up. "Thanks, driver," he said, and then ran off, leaving the driver standing there, puzzled. That's right, Chu Tian had already figured out how to solve his transportation problem. He stood proudly, slapped the large bus behind him, and said with confidence, "From now on, I have my own private bus. No more cramped buses for me. From this point on, call me Big Shot Chu Tian." He smiled happily and checked the notification. The first stage of the mission was complete, but then his expression turned blank as he looked at the next stage, Stage 2 of the mission. The objective is to use the newly purchased vehicle in the mountains to compete and win. The time starts at exactly 12 o'clock. Chu Tian stood there, dazed, his face turning pale. He was driving a bus in a race, and this time, he might end up speechless. He held his head with both hands and shouted, "I don't even have a driver's license." A girl walked up behind him, crying, and said, "I do." Chu Tian's eyes lit up with hope. He turned around excitedly, as if he had found a savior. He cried out, grabbing Cecilia's legs, "You're here. Please help me." She squinted her eyes, looking a bit uncomfortable. "Well, Chu, don't take advantage of the situation to hug me." He stepped up onto a stair. Chu Tian turned his head and a piece of paper stuck to his nose, a result of clinging to her leg. He spoke seriously. "Time's running out, no time for small talk. Let's go." The road was filled with cars. Someone from below shouted, "I just tuned my car yesterday. I have liquid nitrogen boost, so there's no way I'm losing to you guys today." Jiang Hao crossed his arms and leaned against the car, sneering, "That junk of yours doesn't even have the right to make me smell its exhaust." A person couldn't hold back and taunted, "Isn't this our Jiang Hao? Young Master Jiang, I've heard you invited someone to dinner a few days ago, but no one showed up." Jiang Hao gritted his teeth in anger and grabbed the collar of the man. "You." Su King, with one hand on her hip, concealed behind her mask, said, "Everyone, be quiet." Then someone cheered. It was the racing goddess driving the sleek, all-white car known as Fai Shu. She was called the legendary figure of Lajia Mountain. On that snowy night, even Jiang Hao couldn't help but be mesmerized by the goddess's beauty. Su King lightly stepped onto the road. "Stop talking nonsense." With a luxurious car in the background, she spoke coolly. "Let's race." Jiang Hao smirked. The legend said that if you beat her, you get to see the face behind her mask. "Today, I'm going to win her over." He raised his voice. "Are all the racers here? Let's get started." Suddenly, the headlights from a car shone blindingly bright. The strong light hit Jiang Hao's face directly. He raised his hand to shield his eyes and yelled, "My eyes." Chu Tian leaned out of his new car and waved, saying, "Save a spot for me." It was a bit hard to process the sight of several luxury cars parked next to a bus. Cecilia, standing next to Chu Tian, blushed in embarrassment. Racing a bus, this is the first time I've ever felt embarrassed in my life. Jiang Hao, filled with indignation, had tears in his eyes. "Chu Tian, of course it's you." He sat inside the car, grinning with satisfaction. Chu Tian tilted his head slightly, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth, his gaze calm as it drifted outside the car window. Su Kang noticed his stare. Chu Tian's eyes followed every subtle curve of her face, her mysterious, masked expression. "I'll try to see through with my eyes," Chu Tian murmured, focusing intently on Su King. His eyes widened in surprise as he recognized her through the mask. The two figures seemed like opposing forces. One, gentle like a soft breeze on a warm autumn day, calm and serene. The other radiating strength and personality. The obedient girl from school, Su King. In Chu Tian's memory, Su King stood out brightly in the crowd at school. Su King, the goddess of every boy in the school. She had a seductive figure, a wealthy family, stunning looks, and unforgettable presence. Su King calmly held her notebook, her poise drawing admiring glances from many around her. Her academic skills were exceptional. She was also highly athletic, confidently holding a tennis racket and excelling in sports. A gentle, sweet smile played on her lips. Chu Tian never expected her to know how to race cars. He stood there mesmerized, his eyes fixed on her in awe. After a while, Su King, clearly uncomfortable with his gaze, glared at him. "What are you staring at?" Creepy pest. He quickly shrank back into his car, only daring to sneak a few glances. Chu Tian smirked mischievously, realizing with some surprise that the goddess had a fierce side he hadn't noticed before. The cars lined up at the starting line with the countdown beginning 3, 2, 1, go. All the cars took off at high speeds with steady determination, but Chu Tian's bus seemed to stand out in the crowd. Jiang Hao gritted his teeth, throwing an annoyed glance toward the bus and muttering to himself, "A bus in a race? What's wrong with that guy?" Chu Tian, leaning back comfortably with his hands behind his head, casually observed the race. He even stuck his hand out of the window, waving provocatively. "This time, I'll crush you beneath my wheels." At this moment, his bus was neck and neck with Su King's racing car, and neither of them had started yet. Chu Tian leaned out of the window, looking over at her. "Hey, beautiful, why haven't you started yet?" Su King relaxed, kept her eyes closed. "I've arranged with the referee for a 5-minute delay, so no one can accuse me of bullying you." Chu Tian absent-mindedly replied, "Well, let's wait a little longer then." She sat up quickly and looked over at him. "Hey, the entry fee is 50,000. Do you really want to just lose like that?" He rested his chin on one hand, looking off to the side. "A little 50,000 is nothing serious. We have to stay humble." Chu Tian felt a lump in his throat, tears welling up as he thought, "Anyway, this money is from the system, so I can't spend it on anything else." He raised his pink pig-shaped wristwatch and hesitated before saying confidently, 50,000 isn't a big deal. Who's to say who'll win and who'll lose?" Su King replied, "The bus isn't even fixed yet. Do you seriously think you can win?" Chu Tian gave a bold smile, placing a hand on his chest. "I have my own tricks. Chu Tian isn't someone who just gives up." She frowned, tense, thinking of herself. Chu Tian? Could he be that person who's been causing a stir at school lately? Her hands gripped the steering wheel as she pressed the gas pedal. "Well, I'm curious to see how you plan to win." Su King's race car zoomed off. Chu Tian eagerly pointed ahead and said, "The plan starts now." He pulled out his phone from a bag. The first step was the most important one. Suddenly, a phone rang loudly from the other side. A hand reached over and picked up the receiver. "Hello." The phone was pressed to his ear, and a slow, satisfied smile spread across his face. His eyes gleamed with excitement. "Good. The plan is about to succeed." Chu Tian took a deep breath and suddenly shouted, "Police!" There's a group of people racing cars on Mount Lusun. On Jiang Hao's side, he took a sharp turn, creating the screeching sound of the tires grinding against the road. He glanced at the rearview mirror. No one was following. With his left hand gripping the steering wheel, he smiled proudly, thinking to himself, Chu Tian must be somewhere far behind by now. His expression darkened, and his eyes narrowed with a cold, angry gleam. "Once I win this race, I'm going to teach that kid a lesson." Suddenly, the car swerved out of control. Jiang Hao panicked, gripping the wheel tightly, trying desperately to regain control. Ahead of him were sharp spikes that could easily puncture the tires. He cursed loudly, "Damn it! Who the hell is trying to sabotage me?" The police officers who Chu Tian had called for help were scanning the area with their flashlights, clearly searching for something. Wai Wai, with a serious expression, pointed her finger and said decisively, "Sabotage. You've committed serious public safety violations, tampered with the car, and participated in illegal gambling. I'm placing you under arrest right now." Jiang Hao froze, completely caught off guard. He had been enjoying the race, only to be suddenly arrested by the police. Wai Wai turned her gaze toward the other cars, her eyebrows furrowing. She had no idea of who had eagerly called the police. When she met them again in the future, she would definitely have to thank them. Chu Tian's bus continued to cruise along leisurely. Cecilia, who was driving, spoke up, "Young master, there's a relatively secret route we can take to avoid the traffic. Should we go that way?" Chu Tian casually rested his hand behind his head. "I've already called the police to block the nearest road. The others will have to take a longer route, which gives us the chance to win." She was surprised. "Are you saying we're just going to drive straight through the toll station?" He yawned long and slow. "You'll see when we get there." Meanwhile, Jiang Hao and his group were being scolded for their illegal behavior. Chu Tian's bus was getting close to where they were. Suddenly, someone collided with Wai Wai's rear. The screech of the tires echoed. The fabric of her dress ripped, making a distinct sound. Wai Wai turned bright red, her hands covering the tear on her backside. Who did that? Chu Tian casually rolled down the window, looking out with a mocking expression. Isn't that Zhou Wai Wai? Someone called out. She fumed with anger, but her cheeks remained flushed. Chu Tian, you're racing too, aren't you? He smirked slightly, his gaze full of sarcasm. Racing? Zhou Wai Wai? Who would race in a bus? Aren't you tired enough to be this stupid? Chu Tian flashed a bright smile and held up a ticket. I'm just taking the last bus home. Could you please clear the way for me, Wai Wai? Wai Wai placed her hand on her chin, thinking for a moment. It made sense. After all, the bus couldn't race. She had successfully passed the challenge, and the bus started moving. But then Wai Wai suddenly froze, her eyes widening as if a light bulb had gone off in her mind. Something wasn't right. There were no bus routes to Lusun Mountain. She felt a wave of anger as she realized she had been tricked. Watching the bus speed away, she shouted, Wait, you better pay for my dress. Cecilia, who was driving, kept her eyes focused on the road. Young Master, we're in the lead. The second stage is coming up. Suddenly, other racing cars caught up, passing them one by one. Su King sped ahead and glanced back. Why was Chu Tian still leading? A thought struck her. Did he call the police? Su King's car shot ahead at a high speed, quickly pulling away from Chu Tian's car. Smart move. Dream on if you think you can beat us in the racing city, Cecilia said with a hint of worry, watching as they were slowly being overtaken. Young Master, what should we do now? Chu Tian picked up his phone and replied, Right, just do what we discussed earlier. He put on his sunglasses with a smug expression. Money wasn't an issue. He wanted to act fast, and the more forceful, the better. Ahead, Su King's white car was leading the pack. Behind them, a young man was laughing smugly. It was hard to believe someone could be so heartless. Luckily, I knew another way. His face was sinister, his finger poised as if ready to press some button. With this new nitrogen gas accelerator, this time I'll definitely defeat Su King, he said, pressing a button with a lightning bolt symbol, then speeding off. For the glory of honor, for the goddess of my heart, I'm ready. The exhaust pipe behind him emitted a bright light and a loud noise. The car shot forward at an unbelievable speed, leaving all the other vehicles behind. The headlights lit up the night sky like a blazing star. Suddenly, the young man panicked. Sweat poured down his face. Where did that light come from? He thought, as the other cars lost their direction and slammed on their brakes. In the chaos, everyone began to crash into each other. Then the voice suddenly rang out, Earthling. Let me study your body for a moment. The young man clutched his head, completely confused and losing his composure. Could it be aliens? He opened his car door and started crying, shaking as he raised his hand high. I don't want to. I'm still so young. The others, overwhelmed by fear, followed suit, stumbling out of their cars and wailing in despair. They all raised their hands in the air, pleading, Aliens, please spare us. In front of them was Chu Tian's bus. He rested one hand on his chin, tilted his head lazily like a boss, and said, I'm not an alien. Chu Tian pointed upward. Look, up there are tall buildings with blinding lights shining down. I'm just a rich guy. He sighed, placed one hand on his forehead, and with the other hand, pointed at the three people. Cecilia, you handle this. She, sharp-eyed, had a short straw in her mouth, seemingly blowing something. The young man outside was suddenly pricked by a needle in the neck, freezing in place. The two people beside him seemed to have been hit as well, and all three collapsed unconscious right in the street. Chu Tian waved cheerfully. The slow turtle doesn't need to race. You guys can just sleep calmly, have a good rest. He placed a hand on Cecilia's shoulder and gave a thumbs up. You're really good. Cecilia smiled brightly, her eyes squinting. Of course, I learned from the famous detective de Raymond. The bus continued driving, leaving three people collapsed behind. At the spot where Su King's car was parked, she silently observed the situation for a moment. Su King, wearing dark sunglasses, looked mysterious. Chu Tian, as expected, you still have a hidden trick. She pressed the red button in the car, clearly planning to speed up earlier than expected. The rear of the car lifted and raised completely. Su King decisively stepped on the gas, and the nitrogen boost kicked in. The tires gripped the road hard, creating sparks. It felt like the car was given a massive boost, speeding off quickly. Chu Tian, you won't beat me. Chu Tian, holding his phone, was checking the signal strength. How much longer? The signal is bad here. I'll miss the live stream. Cecilia replied, We're still 3 kilometers away. We'll reach the destination soon. He looked out the car window, his face a bit gloomy. Ha! Even up here, I can't escape the cold. Is there really no opponent who can match me? Suddenly, Chu Tian heard something and glanced over. What's that sound? He looked up at the sky and saw a car hovering in the air. It was Su King's car. It landed with a powerful thud. Su King and Chu Tian locked eyes. She raised her hand to her neck, making a gesture as if to provoke him. Chu Tian couldn't help but feel a bit impressed. To be able to chase like this, truly, she was the queen of clever strategies. Su King's car sped up, overtaking Chu Tian. Cecilia, anxious, spoke up, "Young master, what should we do now?" He fell into deep concentration, his eyes sharp. This situation wasn't part of the plan. Could they really lose like this? He turned to Cecilia and pointed ahead, asking, "Do you have any way to throw the walkie-talkie into her car?" She smirked, her smile full of confidence, as if she had everything under control. "Young master, just watch me." Cecilia ripped open her coat and tore a piece of fabric from her pants. She wrapped the walkie-talkie tightly in the cloth. Then, with a graceful motion, she leaned out the car door, her long fingers gripping the bundle. She swung it in the air before releasing it. The walkie-talkie flew through the air and landed beside the passenger seat of Su King's car, catching her attention. Chu Tian's voice came from the walkie-talkie. "Beautiful lady, is the race tiring? If you want, you can pull over and rest for a bit." Su King blinked, then sharply responded, "Stop trying to play tricks on me. The loser only deserves to lick my feet." Her words flushed Chu Tian's imagination with a vision of Su King's alluring blush. "Lick your feet?" He eagerly responded, "That sounds good, but I'll need to win first." Then Su King frowned and angrily shot back, "You're such a pervert. Don't even think about winning today." Chu Tian laughed, clearly enjoying the back and forth. "So, you're sure you could beat me?" The queen of the night. Su King was stunned. "Or should I call you Su King?" She changed color, her face drenched in sweat from worry. "How do you know? I clearly disguised myself." Chu Tian grinned with a mischievous look, thinking about Su King in her swimsuit. "I not only know what your face looks like under that mask, but I also know the color of your underwear." He said cheerfully, "I can keep your secret, but you have to show a little sincerity too." Su King couldn't help feeling embarrassed, her cheeks turning red. "You're shameless." Her car slowly came to a stop, then braked suddenly. Su King spoke up, "Go ahead, I give up the championship." Chu Tian's car quickly crossed the finish line. He shone, wearing sunglasses, basking in the attention of the crowd as they cheered. The champion, Chu Tian. Su King stood outside, watching and thinking, "If you dare say anything about this, I will never forgive you." Chu Tian quietly slipped away from the crowd because the live stream was about to start. His phone displayed the live comments. "Brother Chu Tian, the editor is so handsome. A girl appeared on screen with a stunning figure. I'll dance a bit. Everyone remember to send me some housewarming gifts." She started singing and dancing to the rhythm with hundreds of comments praising her. "Hello, let's party. The greatest national diviner, the cosmic prophet." Chu Tian's face turned bright red, his nose still bleeding and his eyes were glued to his phone. The scene on the screen was incredibly captivating. He seemed completely entranced, his eyes wide and unfocused, totally unsure of who the girl on the screen actually was. Chu Tian looked ecstatic, his mouth slightly open in sheer delight as he watched the live stream of his idol on his phone. On the screen, a sexy, hot girl appeared with an hourglass figure that was impossible to ignore, though her face was still hidden. She wore a mask, but even with that covering, it was clear she was mesmerizing, drawing viewers in completely. That girl was Tian Feifei. Suddenly, a cat rushed in, but instead of meowing, it barked like a dog. Its eyes were wide open, like it had spotted a tasty prey. On the other hand, Tian Feifei, startled by the strange sight, froze. She was too rushed to react in time, and as a result, she lost her balance and fell hard to the ground in pain. Immediately, scratches from the cat's claws and bruises from the unexpected fall appeared on her smooth, fair skin. What was even more upsetting was that the comments flooding the live stream were mostly harsh and negative. Many criticized her and belittled her abilities, even though she was just a newcomer. No matter how harsh people were with their words, she still automatically assumed that every mistake was her fault. With tears welling up in her eyes, she apologized to everyone and blamed herself for the missteps during her dance performance that day. Chu Tian had been watching the whole situation unfold, and he was incredibly upset. His hands clenched into fists and his whole body tensed, feeling frustrated that his idol was being mistreated. "These people don't understand anything. How could they talk about my goddess like that?" After this incident, Tian Feifei's popularity took a massive hit and her fan base couldn't defend her. Her rating dropped significantly to just 26. If things continued like this, it would fall even further down to just 7. Not only was she already feeling down, but a little kitten kept jumping around, adding to the chaos. The entire scene had been captured live on the stream. As a fan of hers, Chu Tian never missed a second of the live broadcast. His heart ached for her and tears streamed down his face as he whispered to himself, If I had the money to send more gifts and help her rise up the rankings, I'd do it in a heartbeat to make my goddess shine again. Just as he finished speaking, a strange light suddenly appeared in his hand, leaving him stunned. He opened his palm, and the light grew even brighter at the tip of his finger. Immediately, a crown appeared on Tian Feifei's live broadcast screen, along with a message wishing her all the best. Congratulations to Tian Feifei on her live broadcast. The noble crown has been born. Quick, everyone, come and help Tian Feifei grab the red envelope. Chu Tian smiled with joy and thought to himself, who is this? Their taste is so refined, and they just gave my goddess a noble crown. A moment ago, her face was full of wealth, and as soon as the heat around her spiked, she was completely caught off guard. The temperature was at 2.06 million, and it wasn't stopping there. The number kept rising as time went on. Seeing the kindness of this person, she was deeply moved, tears welling up in her eyes, and she kept thanking the user named Tian Tian Chu for giving her the noble crown. At that moment, Chu Tian also felt something strange. Wait a minute, isn't Tian Tian Chu my nickname? Not long after this thought crossed his mind, his phone screen lit up with a notification. Curious, Chu Tian clicked on it and carefully read the message. Congratulations to the user Tian Tian Chu for receiving the Tian Feifei Noble Crown. Your red envelope gift has been sent. Please continue supporting your favorite live stream. Then, the screen displayed a ranking list, likely showing today's viewership rankings. In first place was none other than the user Tian Tian Chu, someone who not only watched for a long time, but was definitely a big player. He sighed and covered his face. This is a person of exceptional taste, handsome, rich, and it's me. Chu Tian furrowed his brows in surprise, thinking it over and realizing that it wasn't entirely unreasonable. Right, he hadn't even checked the rewards for the race yet. Just to be sure, Chu Tian immediately searched the system for more information. Could this reward be a gift-making machine? Scrolling to the end, he found a line that read, Gold Hand Ticket. It seemed like this was exactly what he was looking for. The Gold Hand Ticket was a gift he had earned, limited to one use only, and could be used for unlimited virtual currency at any website. Chu Tian didn't seem too excited about this prize. In fact, he was clearly disappointed. He pointed at the screen, read the words carefully, and then sighed, limited usage. I feel like I'm getting a raw deal here. The next morning, sunlight poured into the school building where Chu Tian studied. He walked into class, yawning. Suddenly, his eyes snapped wide open when he saw something. It was a girl with long, slender legs, her injury wrapped up in a bandage. Maybe it was just a coincidence, but it felt like a connection to what happened the day before, when his idol had the exact same injury in the same spot. Chu Tian thought back and immediately realized the connection. Could it be Tian Feifei, the goddess? And then he kept staring at her, not taking his eyes off her for a single moment. After a while, the girl turned toward him and flashed a bright smile. It seemed like Chu Tian's guess wasn't quite right after all. He wondered how this person could be Su King. Chu Tian sighed in extreme disappointment. Shaking his head in frustration, he made his feelings clear without hesitation. All that excitement for nothing. Her figure and appearance just didn't match up. However, Su King still smiled at him with a gentle, radiant smile. She shyly responded, Classmate Chu, you finally made it. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Chu Tian ignored her coldly, even brushing it off as if she were doing something completely unnecessary. Waiting for me to do what? We don't even know each other. Su King put on an innocent expression. How can you say something like that? But even though she spoke like this, her true feelings were clear. Her tone shifted 180 degrees. You little brat, you dared to threaten me last night. Let's see if I don't kill you. Right after that, something shiny flickered from across the crowd. It flashed into Chu Tian's eyes, making it impossible for him to ignore. He pointed and shouted in an authoritative voice, Who turned on the light? A round object was emitting a dazzling glow. It turned out to be the shiny, bald head of a young man, which made everyone around him stifle a laugh. The person in question was Jiang Hao, with his shiny, bald head and an angry expression sitting there. When Chu Tian saw Jiang Hao looking like that, he walked over with a look of amusement. Seeing this, he felt frustrated inside. Not this kid again. Every time I run into him, something bad happens. Suddenly, Jiang Hao had an idea. Right, why didn't I think earlier that the person who called the police must have been Chu Tian? He stood up, gathered all his courage, and shouted at Chu Tian. You were the one who called the police yesterday. Without thinking further, he just assumed his guess was correct. When Chu Tian heard this, he casually sniffed and acted dismissive. He defended himself by saying that he had been with Su King the entire evening. Chu Tian even teasingly turned to her and asked, Isn't that right, Miss Su? What's so hard to let someone else handle? At the mention of her name, everyone's gaze immediately focused on Su King. She became the center of attention, and in contrast, the one feeling awkward and shy was Su King herself. her face flushed with embarrassment as she lowered her head, avoiding everyone's eyes, silently cursing Chu Tian for digging his own grave. Noticing her hesitation and lack of a strong response, the others could guess what had happened. Meanwhile, Chu Tian just relaxed and enjoyed himself, humming a song as though nothing was wrong. The situation was just starting, yet they had already turned Su King's issue into a topic for gossip and judgment. Shocking secret. The campus beauty is taken, and it's Chu Tian, the young master. Another person responded, Chu Tian really is something, definitely a young master with style. Su King stood there frustrated and powerless. All she could do was clench her fists tightly, her body tense with anger. Chu Tian, I will make you pay for this. After a bit more chatter, a voice rang out. Students, please sit down. Class is about to begin. The teacher for today's lesson had arrived, walking on tiptoe in her high heels as she wrote on the board. Zillin's figure was incredibly attractive, and her voice was captivating enough to stir emotions. Today, we'll learn about electric charge in an electric field. Chu Tian froze for a moment as something about this scene felt oddly familiar. It seemed like he had seen this teacher before. He looked closely at every detail of Zillin, noticing that her shoulder was frayed, there was a tear on one side of her thigh, and even a slight bruise on her ankle. Chu Tian instinctively raised his hand to check, turning his head left and right, trying to figure it out. It hit him. Zillin and the goddess Tian Feifi had similar features. After a while of strange actions and silent guesses, Zillin noticed him and raised her voice. Chu Tian, why are you so spaced out? As soon as she spoke, he felt overjoyed, nearly moved to tears. He immediately recognized it and could confidently say he wasn't mistaken. He never imagined Tian Feifei, the distant goddess, would be right here in front of him. Chu Tian was surprised, unable to recognize Professor Chen, who was actually his greatest love, the goddess. He suddenly froze and let out a soft gasp as he realized something. The information board displayed the level of difficulty, showing an Inferno challenge, and the system's mission details began to unfold. The information was recorded clearly and in detail. This time, the task had a 1-week deadline, aiming for a top 3 ranking in a live stream competition. The reward for the task was temporarily undisclosed. Chu Tian furrowed his brows, propped up his chin, and couldn't help but wonder, what does obtain mean? Also, the mission's reward was hidden. After thinking for a moment, he shrugged and decided to focus on the task. Whatever, I'll just do the mission first. It's not like there's any risk. Though he said that out loud, inside, Chu Tian was still a bit unsure and skeptical. Even though the chance that Professor Chen was Tian Feifei was high, it would still be best to use his X-ray vision to double-check. He was so fixated on looking at Zillin that he actually started to get a nosebleed, unable to control himself. I'm not doing this for personal gain. Tian Feifei has a mole on her thigh. It has to be her. Suddenly, Chu Tian froze again as he noticed something. He used his X-ray vision to peer through Zillin's outer clothing, revealing the enticing curves of his teacher and her bright red lingerie. Although he had already seen her seductive figure, human nature is always greedy. Chu Tian still felt unsatisfied. He cried out, "This can't be real, right? Why does the X-ray vision only let me see through one layer of clothing?" Not content, Chu Tian kept staring at Zillin's short skirt, which made her feel embarrassed enough to cover herself with a book. Chu Tian, why aren't you paying attention? What are you looking at? Caught in the act, he quickly played it off, shaking his head as if nothing had happened, acting like it was all just a misunderstanding. At that moment, Zillin's phone rang and her face suddenly became filled with worry. She broke into a sweat, her expression turning sorrowful. Then she quickly said, "Everyone self-study today. Please read ahead from the next section." It seemed like the phone call was urgent. Zillin turned to leave in a hurry, but she was so focused on answering the call that she tripped and fell painfully. She seemed like the clumsy, distracted type. In Chu Tian's eyes, all he could see was Zillin weak and crying, looking pitiful. From this incident, Chu Tian became even more certain of his suspicions than ever before. He was right. Tian Feifei had cried when she was attacked by netizens, and Professor Chen's tears were exactly the same as hers. This time, it really struck a nerve with Chu Tian. His face at that moment looked quite scary. He scowled in anger and stormed out the door. "I'm done with all these tasks. Whether I get paid or not, I won't let anyone make my goddess cry." By then, Zillin had reached the parking lot to grab her scooter and quickly put on her helmet. In the blink of an eye, Zillin sped off. Behind her, someone was quietly watching, Shan Ya, who was keeping an eye on Zillin. "Get in touch with someone. Wait until she passes, then block her. I don't believe she can keep going much longer." Just then, Chu Tian, who was walking toward them, overheard the entire secret conversation. That meant Shan Ya had made it to Chu Tian's blacklist. Trying to make a move on my goddess? It turned out Zillin was in such a hurry because she was heading to the hospital. She couldn't help but feel anxious and immediately went to ask the doctor. "I'll definitely find a way to gather enough money. Can you please perform the surgery on my father first? The doctor slowly removed his glasses, frowned deeply, and looked utterly helpless. It's not that we don't want to, but some doctors had already contributed money for your father's surgery earlier. This time, we can't help any further. Hearing this shocking news, Zilin burst into tears. She quickly covered her mouth with her hand to try and hold back her emotions. But who could really control themselves in a situation like this? At that moment, her phone suddenly displayed a message that could be seen as an invitation. Have a meal with Boss Zhu and get 500,000. Do you accept? Zilin picked up the phone and moved to a private corner to read the message. She couldn't stop thinking about that 500,000, murmuring to herself. As Zilin was walking out of the hospital, she spotted Shan Ya and his associates. Both of them gave off a dangerous, almost animalistic vibe. Despite feeling a sense of fear, she still moved forward slowly. Before she could react, one of his men spoke with a threatening tone. Think carefully, or your father is as good as done for. At the same time, Shan Ye let out a laugh full of satisfaction. I don't know why you're being so cautious. I didn't see it before, but this young lady is really stubborn. He stepped closer, then lifted Zilin's chin to get a better look at her pretty face. Such a beautiful figure, truly a shame. Before he could finish his sentence, Shan Ye was hit with a powerful punch to the face. The punch knocked him flat on the ground. Zilin was a little shocked as she looked at the person who had come to her rescue. Chu Tian had appeared just in time, playing the role of the hero saving the damsel in distress. He wasted no time in stepping in and showing his strength as he dealt with the bad guys. Afterward, he immediately grabbed Zilin's hand, holding it tightly. At the same time, he declared loudly, "Listen up, all of you. This is my woman." Zilin looked at Chu Tian with eyes full of gratitude, softly calling his name with a gentle, calm tone. The dark-skinned guy who hadn't yet received a lesson bravely stood there and kept shouting. He pointed at the two of them and yelled, "So what? She has a contract with our company." His expression twisted into something nasty as he added, "Who gave her the right not to see things clearly? You should know that the penalty for breaching the contract is..." Before he could finish, Chu Tian once again slapped him across the face, trying to make his face crooked. Hitting someone as filthy, vile, and despicable as these two made Chu Tian feel like his hand was a little dirty. Calmly brushing his hands off, he casually suggested, "If you don't know what you're talking about, don't speak nonsense." Shan Ye lay on the ground for a long time before groggily sitting up. However, his body was still shaking, clearly not fully recovered yet. Suddenly, his two front teeth fell out with a satisfying sound. Even after being hurt so badly, Shan Ye still hadn't learned his lesson. He remained as arrogant as ever. Pulling a hidden knife from his jacket, he ordered, "Kill him." The accomplice heard this and immediately stood up, pulling out a knife with a sharp motion. Both of them had faces filled with hatred. In unison, they threatened, "Do you think your fist can compare to a knife?" For Chu Tian, the more they threatened him, the more ridiculous it seemed. He just pointed at them and mocked them. "It looks like you still don't understand the situation. Don't you realize who's behind you?" When they heard Chu Tian speak so seriously, they panicked and assumed it was true. They quickly turned around, scanning the area and becoming more alert, thinking that an ambush was coming. But in reality, there was nothing unusual. At that moment, they instinctively returned to their original positions, only to realize that Chu Tian and Zilin had disappeared. It turned out that Chu Tian had seized the opportunity to grab Zilin and run away from them. They quietly watched the two of them leave, but couldn't catch up. All they could do was shout in frustration, "How dare you trick us?" Chu Tian carried Zilin all the way to the bus he had parked earlier. Without a second thought, he jumped out of the bus. Shan Ya and his crew arrived just in time to see the bus, but they couldn't get on. They clung to the idea of chasing after them, not willing to let go. For now, Chu Tian and Zilin were safely on the bus. Zilin was still sitting comfortably in his arms, and Chu Tian was enjoying the moment. This unexpected situation made it seem like Zilin was frozen in place. After that, Chu Tian casually whistled and said, "Looks like you guys don't know whose car this is." Seeing Chu Tian's smug expression, Shan Ya got furious. "You tricked us once and now you want to trick us again? Do you really think this bus belongs to you?" Just then, footsteps rushed in quickly. It was Cecilia. She lifted her knee and slammed it straight into Shan Ya's face, causing him to spit out blood. Then she kicked his accomplice, who didn't even have time to react before taking a hit to the groin. Both perverts collapsed. Cecilia quickly tossed them off the bus, and they ended up in a heap on the ground. It was clear, whenever Chu Tian's people got involved, Cecilia was always ready to throw punches. Chu Tian, feeling proud, looked out the window and said, "That's right, this bus really is mine." The bus drove off, but by this point, they were too dazed to hear him. After everything settled down, Zilin hesitantly spoke up. Chu Tian, still not understanding what was going on, asked directly, "Professor Chen, what's going on?" Zilin's cheeks turned bright red, but she continued, "Could you? Made you drop me off first? Thanks to that, you quickly let go with both hands. Sorry, I forgot. Zilin slowly severed foot down, feeling embarrassed. Chu Tian turned his head the other way, grinning wickedly with a satisfied look, thinking he wasn't at a disadvantage. Getting back to the main issue, Zilin realized she was causing trouble for him, so she took the initiative to speak up. Chu Tian, let me go down. The penalty for breaking the contract isn't that bad. Let me talk to them. It shouldn't involve you. Chu Tian kindly responded, Don't worry, you're already mine now. A mission progress bar then appeared, showing that, by this point, 1/3 of the task had been completed. Chu Tian smirked, thinking it through. This task didn't seem too difficult. It looked like getting into the top 3 for these 2 conditions could be split up. Chu Tian's moment of absent-minded thinking was just a side note, but after his earlier statement that she was his, Zilin suddenly snapped and pinched his ear. Don't talk nonsense. Why would I be yours? Chu Tian naturally pressed his head into her full chest, starting to squirm and act all spoiled. Not now, but soon enough you will be. Zilin quickly covered herself, blushing and seriously saying, Chu Tian, I warn you. I'm your teacher, remember. Seeing this, Chu Tian also used the excuse of the village drum. He scratched his head, smiled lightly, and said, We're at your stop. He held Zilin off the bus, said goodbye, and promised to see her tomorrow. Everything happened so quickly that Zilin didn't have time to fully process it. She watched the bus drive away and silently thought, could Chu Tian actually like me? It felt like a bolt of love had struck her, though we're teacher and student after all. A moment later, the scene shifts to a corner of a factory area. Chu Tian's bust had just arrived, and he immediately asked with a serious expression, Are we here? Cecilia, with a slight tone of suggestion, replied, We've arrived, young master. Do you need me to call a few more people? Chu Tian didn't respond right away, but asked, Is everything ready? She tapped the box of supplies and confidently answered, It's all set. Chu Tian took the box and stepped off the bus, confidently reassuring, With this gun, do we really need to fear them just because there are more of them? He walked straight toward the group, unflinching. People around him whispered, Well, what's this? Where did this little rat come from? Chu Tian paused, looked inside, and casually slung the box over his sturdy shoulder. Inside the warehouse, a figure was sitting on the sofa waiting. Seeing this, Chu Tian spoke up, Stop acting all mysterious. I still have to get back and watch the live stream later. The old boss spoke up, Chu Tian, are you the one who kidnapped Tian Feifei, the artist from my company? He seriously emphasized kidnapping as a serious crime. I'm giving you a chance to explain, but you won't be able to talk your way out of this. Chu Tian calmly responded, bluntly and unexpectedly, Yeah, so what? The old man immediately panicked and shouted loudly, You didn't kidnap her. But that answer of yours doesn't quite match the clear and definite response I was expecting from you. Chu Tian just stood there with a straight face, and the old man, confused, started to think things over. The boss asked, Are you admitting it now? This doesn't follow the script. Chu Tian casually slipped his hand into his coat and smiled. At that moment, the boss's bodyguards quickly surrounded Chu Tian to protect their boss, standing still and alert. He had a gun. Chu Tian then pulled out a Peppa Pig-shaped key. The bodyguards froze, realizing their actions had been completely pointless. Next, he calmly unlocked his suitcase and it popped open to reveal the butt of a gun. Without taking a close look, the bodyguards panicked again, shouting, This is bad. It's really a gun. Boss, be careful. Caught off guard, the bodyguards were immediately hit with a punch. Cecilia swiftly took them down with powerful strikes before they had a chance to react. They were sent flying in all directions, each of them knocked away. Seeing this, Chu Tian seized the opportunity, stomping his foot hard on the ground to build momentum for his attack. His powerful shout rang out, If you're going to target my woman, you should know your limits. You aimed the red dot at the director and accepted the outcome. The most tense moment was approaching, and Chu Tian's finger was already on the trigger, ready to act. You stood boldly on the director's desk, even shouting loudly, Take the bullet. Others tried to reach out from afar to stop you, but they couldn't. They were deeply worried about their leader. The old director cried uncontrollably and thought to himself, This guy is even more rude than I am. He's ready to pull the trigger. Fearfully, he closed his eyes and raised his hand, covering his face with his shiny gold ring because he couldn't bear to watch. After a moment, nothing unexpected happened. He opened his eyes wide to see what had happened and was stunned to find something else. Money was falling everywhere around him. Was heaven really made of money? He didn't expect Chu Tian to treat money like paper, freely shooting it out of a toy gun. While his hands continued to lavish money on them, Chu Tian's face showed clear frustration. You spread your arms wide and said, Old man, stop dreaming. I'm your god. All the bullets in here are the contract money of Tian Feifei. At this moment, Chu Tian took out his phone, which was already displaying a picture of Zilin. He corrected something. From today onward, she no longer belongs to your company. Although he had already received a sum of money, neither too little nor too much, the old man, driven by endless greed, still didn't seem satisfied. He hesitated for a moment. Chu Tian, not at all happy, tossed his gun aside and made a decision without any second thoughts. He knew exactly what these materialistic people were after. Your butt is just an excuse to complain about the amount of money. Chu Tian opened his suitcase and took out 2 more money guns. If one wasn't enough, then 2 would do. And just like that, a flurry of bills shot straight into the man's face, fast and relentless. Despite this, it still didn't seem enough for the director. Without waiting for him to say a word, Chu Tian made another decision. He had plenty of money in his suitcase. He tossed the 2 guns he was holding behind him and continued pulling out more guns to supply this man. 2 guns aren't enough? Then let's go with 3. In a world where greed reigns, there's no more worry. What could be more enjoyable than this? They all cheered Chu Tian, lifting him to the highest point. Chu Tian was generous with his actions, tossing money without hesitation, throwing it freely without a second thought. To get that contract with Zilin, the old director only agreed when it was clear it involved Tian Feifei, the goddess in his heart. They really know how to ask for money. Chu Tian quickly grabbed the contract and turned to leave. Before disappearing from sight, he made sure to say one more thing. Tian Feifei is my woman. If I say she's mine, then she's mine. After taking care of everything, Chu Tian returned to the car and sat next to Cecilia. He held the contract tightly, not taking his eyes off it. Cecilia hesitated for a long time before finally asking, "All of this isn't really my place to ask. Is it worth spending that much money for your teacher?" Chu Tian didn't just answer quickly, saying it was worth it, but he also decisively ripped up the dirty contract without a second thought. His face was hard, full of cold anger, and he continued, "But how could I let anyone bully Ms. Chen?" Meanwhile, the old director was left stunned and furious. He couldn't believe the money he got was all fake. His 2 subordinates were still desperately searching to see if any bills were real. After a while, they reported back to him, "There are 3 real bills here." In the end, they only found 250 yuan, which was just enough for 2 words. "You idiot." That was Chu Tian's clever message. Though the old director didn't get it and angrily ordered his men to slam into the wall. "You dare to insult me?" At that very moment, a gun was pressed directly against the back of his neck, accompanied by an order to stay still. This was a real gun. The sly director slowly turned his eyes toward the back, only to find himself trembling in fear like a rabbit. He immediately dropped to his knees and bowed his head to the ground, crying, "Boss, I'm sorry." Before the pathetic man could offer any excuses, a mysterious figure, referred to as Boss, kicked him straight in the face. One person was in pain, the other was laughing. She thought that if he truly wanted to apologize, it would be better for him to just die. Meanwhile, in the teacher's office, Zilin opened a package, puzzled beyond belief. "I haven't bought anything recently, and there's a note on the package from Chu Tian. If satisfied, please leave a 5-star review." When she opened it, the box was filled with scraps of paper. To an outsider, it might seem pointless, but Zilin felt completely different. She was stunned when she saw this, her mouth trembling as she couldn't even form a sentence. Zilin quickly recognized that it was the contract she had worked on before, now torn into pieces, making it null and void. She carefully picked up each piece, her heart filled with joy. But that wasn't all. Among the mess of paper, she found a letter. She cautiously picked it up. The letter contained details about the artist management company, Tian Chu, the contract, and the signing fee. These details were now waiting for a decision from Zilin. The paper couldn't be mistaken. It was clearly Chu Tian's contract. After a series of unexpected events, Zilin couldn't help but feel curious. A few days ago, Tian Chu had helped her clear VIP members for the 24 Gold Super Airplane. Not far outside, someone was quietly watching Zilin. It was Cecilia standing in a tree with binoculars. Meanwhile, Chu Tian was comfortably sitting by the tree waiting for news. Then he opened his eyes and got straight to the point. "Has Ms. Chen signed yet?" Cecilia carefully descended from the tree and confidently responded, "Of course. With such an attractive offer, her father needs surgery and urgently needs the money." At that, Chu Tian felt a sense of pride about the previous event, where Zilin's teacher Tian Feifei had received over 2 million views online. The huge gift she gave had attracted a lot of followers. The number of viewers on the live stream was still growing. He was being very careful with his next plan to complete his task as quickly as possible. Miss Chen will definitely make it into the top 3. Right now, I can't give gifts, so I'll have to use money to sign a contract with the top 2. With that, Chu Tian pulled out his phone to check the current ranking of popular streamers. It was clear that the top spot was held by Bullied. In his heart, Chu Tian already had a plan. First, he needed to take down the #1 streamer. Bullied's live stream video now had over 14 million views, a huge number that no one had come close to reaching yet. However, most of her viewers were focused on judging her appearance and age. Chu Tian stopped watching the video and gently climbed the steps to board the bus. He felt the best thing to do now was to find Cao Biluo and negotiate. No matter how much it took, he needed to get her to sign the contract. In an instant, the two of them met and the deal was done. Biluo's reaction seemed like she was really impressed by Chu Tian. She leaned forward, gazing at him with her hands on her cheeks, her face flushed like a young girl, eagerly agreeing without hesitation. The deal happened so quickly that Chu Tian could hardly believe it. She didn't bargain. She was the #1 streamer. Biluo stepped closer and wrapped her arms around his, speaking in a sweet, almost ceruby voice. I think you're a good person, so you wouldn't lie to me. But the close distance made Chu Tian feel a bit uncomfortable, so he tried to pull his hand away. He scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed, and gently complimented her. You're very promising. It might have been a bit fast, but you didn't hesitate at all. On the contrary, you felt excited, like you were ready to soar. Who would have thought it would be this simple? Victory was right in front of you. But Chu Tian didn't realize that Cao Biluo had already been planning this from the start. On the outside, she smiled and spoke like an angel, but deep down, she was a devil. Chu Tian, by doing this, you've invited the wolf into your house to watch how I'll make you die in my hands. Thinking this, Biluo raised her glass and offered a toast to Chu Tian. Brother, I'll drink to you. Chu Tian, still unaware, happily lifted his glass and drank it all in one go, thinking he wouldn't leave until he was drunk. In that moment, Biluo turned her head, giving a meaningful look to her subordinate, Mao Lai, who was behind her, signaling for him to act. He frowned, understanding the silent message from his young mistress. As Mao Li calmly boarded the bus, Cecilia noticed him. Actually, this was all part of Chu Tian's plan. He wasn't careless at all. Every move was under his control. Mao Lai looked around carefully before reaching into his jacket, planning to pull something out. But just then, a tiny needle flew out of nowhere and struck him in the neck. Before Mao Li could finish his task, Cecilia appeared. I saw your move coming from a mile away. If you want to harm the young master, you'll have to get through me first. Mao Li calmly pulled the needle out, stood up, and acted like nothing had happened. Cecilia gasped in shock. Sir, the anesthetic has no effect on you. The old man straightened his clothes and chuckled lightly, explaining, the anesthetic? I became immune to that a long time ago. Looks like you don't know who I am. To show off his strength, Mao Lai gathered his inner energy, causing his clothes to tear apart. Then he introduced himself. I am Mao Lai, the 5th Great Wolf. Although I might be older than the young lads around here, my body is still in pretty good shape. Let me show you our unique martial arts. Cecilia threw a punch with all her strength. Although her speed was impressive, Mao Lai easily dodged it. This battle would require Cecilia to focus even more. What kind of technique is this with such flexibility? Her next strike not only missed its target, but was also caught by the old man, who tightened his grip on her wrist. He softly said, it has a rather strange name. It's called the Dance of the Devil. Cecilia quickly tried to pull her hand back, but suddenly her head spun and her vision blurred. Despite that, she still held on tightly, unwilling to give up. With determination, Cecilia shouted out the name of her technique, Evil Martial Arts, Feel My Power. This move unleashed a flurry of punches, fast and sharp, as if dozens of arms were striking all at once. But to Mao Lai, he believed that Seely simply couldn't keep up with the smooth rhythm of his attacks, so he easily dodged every single blow she threw. Taking advantage of her momentary lapse in focus, he struck Cecilia on the neck, knocking her out cold in her chair. Seizing the opportunity, Mao Lai quickly snapped a picture of the beautiful woman, clearly enjoying the moment. Meanwhile, Chu Tian and Biluo were toasting with enthusiasm. From an outside perspective, it appeared that Chu Tian was the one getting drunk, while Biluo seemed completely sober. She smiled as she looked at him, thinking to herself that this was definitely a trap. Under the table, as she lifted her skirt, she found a small hidden bag tucked beneath it. Unable to hold on any longer, Chu Tian passed out, slumped over the table with his hand unable to keep a firm grip on his glass. Seeing this, Biluo knew for sure that the victory was truly in her hands. Stepping up onto the table, she crossed her arms and loudly declared, Did you really think I was going to sign a contract with you? To celebrate her victory, Biluo poured herself a full glass of wine and drank it all in one go. Once you're drunk, I'll tear up the contract and throw you onto the bus that's already waiting with the evidence, she said, grinning widely, her teeth flashing. You can go to prison and drink with your fellow inmates. But the story didn't end there. Just when it seemed like everything had been settled, the moment Biluo was the most excited was when Chu Tian suddenly woke up, murmuring, I don't think I like drinking either. Biluo was completely stunned when she saw that he was still fine. She couldn't stop being shocked. Why are you? Chu Tian, looking a bit awkward and guilty, quietly admitted, I'm kind of embarrassed, but when I walked in earlier, I used an X-ray glass to check you out. He then started putting her down. You really thought you hid that powder well? I saw it the moment I looked. After this incident, Chu Tian thought that, yeah, it was obvious as soon as he looked. It seemed like from now on, he'd be to make a habit of using X-ray glasses to check out beautiful women. Still, Billio wasn't convinced. So what if you saw it? Sooner or later, you'll end up dead in my hands. Chu Tian stood up, placed his hand on the table, and gave a loud, "Oh, you better worry about yourself first. Don't you realize who actually ended up drinking your powder?" Billio sat there for a while, staring at the glass of wine. Slowly, gout started creeping into her mind. She began to feel unwell, sweat pouring down her face as she muttered angrily, "You're despicable. You're a bad person." Her body grew weak, her energy draining like wet noodles, the drug starting to take its effect. Faced with this situation, Chu Tian didn't want to take any more chances. "I've still got things to do." At the same time, his face twisted into an unsettling grin, licking his lips in a sneaky, low way. Billio was feeling incredibly uncomfortable at that moment, shrinking and not daring to move, constantly blaming Chu Tian. "You can't do that. That's illegal." Chu Tian looked at her and responded, "Well, to me, it's not exactly as you say." "Huh? Illegal?" Billio asked, surprised. "How is it illegal?" Chu Tian walked over to the dining table, took out a bag, and casually set it aside without paying attention to Billio. He then dumped the leftover food into the bag. Chu Tian gave Billio a lesson. "This is a good traditional virtue of our people. How could it be illegal?" The two of them had completely different viewpoints, and the confused one was none other than Billio. She froze, misunderstanding his intentions. Chu Tian carefully tied up each bag of delicious food. Even though he had already taken a good portion, he still said, feeling upset, "You inviting someone to a meal with no sincerity at all, and I haven't even had a chance to eat much." At this point, Billio yelled out because things weren't going as she expected. "A beautiful girl like me is right in front of you, and you're thinking about leftover food." Chu Tian, a guy who didn't seem very interested in this type of woman, since his heart already belonged to Zilin, scratched his head and asked, looking a bit clueless, "Really? So am I supposed to care more about you than about eating?" The more Billio listened to what he was saying, the more her frustration grew. She was absolutely livid. She kicked the table hard, causing a plate of food on the edge to fall and shatter. Seeing this, Chu Tian's face darkened. His eyes turned cold and full of anger, making her shudder. He grabbed Billio's arm, pulling her without a word. He laid her across his lap as if he were scolding a child. With a swift movement, he raised his hand, intending to teach her a lesson, and then smacked her hard on the bottom. In that position, and with the medicine kicking in, Billio was unable to move. She cried out loudly, "Chu Tian, my father, has never even hit me." She thought saying this might change the situation, but instead, her words only seemed to encourage Chu Tian more. "If your father doesn't hate you, then I will." He cruelly kept slapping her one after another. With a satisfied smile, Chu Tian walked away with 2 bags of leftover food, one filled with large crabs and shrimp, the other with bottles of expensive wine. In the room, Billio was left alone with nothing but pain. She clung to the chair and cried pitifully. At the moment Chu Tian arrived at the door, Mao Lai was just returning. The two passed by each other, and the old man glanced at him with suspicion. He then shifted his focus to Billio. Mao Lai asked, "Boss Lady Cow, what's wrong with you?" Billio's weak voice came from her. "I'm fine." "What could possibly be wrong? How did you handle things?" Mao Lai nodded confidently. "It's done. Chu Tian and his group are about to hit some bad luck." In reality, Cecilia hadn't fainted at all. She was simply playing her part in the plan. Just when she was focused on driving, Chu Tian sneaked a glance at her, not realizing she was also a beauty. Suddenly, the blaring sirens of a police car sounded, blocking Chu Tian's bus. More vehicles closed in around them. The situation seemed serious. Officer Yuan walked up and shouted, "Chu Tian, based on a tip from a concerned citizen, we suspect you've embezzled a large sum of money." Chu Tian, confused, asked, "What embezzlement are you talking about?" From behind him, Cecilia subtly tugged at his sleeve. Without him realizing it, she pulled out a gun and handed it to him. He stared at it, bewildered, lifting it and inspecting it with a puzzled look. The police officer outside smirked. "It's time." Seizing the moment, he yelled, "The suspect has a gun. All team members, shoot him on sight." The officers immediately aimed their weapons at one target, Chu Tian. Seeing that Chu Tian was at a disadvantage, Officer Yoon immediately ordered his subordinates to open fire, clearly pleased with the situation. But just then, someone stepped in front of Chu Tian, which made him furious because he couldn't take the shot. "Are you disobeying orders, Zhou Weiwei?" he demanded. Zhou Weiwei calmly shook her head and explained in detail. "Officer Yuan, take a closer look. Chu Tian is holding a water gun. To prove his innocence, he fired the gun in his hand, and sure enough, water shot out. It's just a water gun." No matter what happens, it seems like this officer is determined to frame Chu Tian. So now he's also seen as resisting arrest, making him a dangerous suspect. Zhou Weiwei continued, "At the moment, I don't want to take any action without evidence. It's clear that the area around us is completely blocked off. He can't escape, so there's no need to kill him." Officer Yun was frustrated and unwilling to accept it. "Zhou Weiwei, I remember you investigated Enright. You clearly have a grudge, yet you're still helping him. Have you lost your mind?" Weiwei firmly replied, "I have no personal grudge with him. I just believe in justice. I will never let a bad person go, and I will never wrongly accuse an innocent one." Chu Tian, hearing this, was deeply moved. He rushed over and hugged her from behind like a child seeking comfort. "Aunt Zhao, Sister Zhao, Officer Zhao, I'm so touched. I'm a good person." As a man, woman shouldn't be too physically close. Weiwei was sensitive to the sudden contact. She quickly suggested, "Please don't touch me. Let's be clear about this. Right now, Chu Tian is under suspicion, but there's no need to shoot him." No matter how much Weiwei tried to stop him, it was like water off a duck's back to Officer Yuan. He violently shoved Weiwei to the side. She fell face first onto the ground. It was hard for any man to watch such childish behavior from this fat guy. Chu Tian couldn't just stand there and watch anymore. He was furious, his anger boiling over, and his voice came out like a stern warning. "Officer, you're going too far." The officer didn't care at all. In fact, he laughed mockingly, clearly enjoying the moment. "You're still in the mood to defend someone else? You think without her, anyone else will support you?" Chu Tian smiled faintly and replied, "Officer Yuan, don't speak too soon." At that moment, Chu Tian looked toward a corner and ordered, "Come out." Curious, the officer looked over too. Something shot out from the dark alley. It was a flying camera, heading straight toward them. Officer Yuan turned pale when he saw it. He grabbed the camera with one hand and threw it hard to the ground, smashing it without hesitation. The force of the impact was so strong that it accidentally exposed half of his bald head. But now, his focus was entirely on that flying camera. "Let's see what you can do now," he sneered. No matter how intense things got, Chu Tian stayed calm and handled everything without breaking a sweat. Did you know that Cao Bilio, the #1 streamer online, and Tian Feifei, the #2, are both my artists? Officer Yuan was getting angry from Chu Tian's teasing and in his frustration, grabbed the gun from his partner's holster and charged toward Chu Tian. "So having money makes you tough? You need to stay alive to spend it." Chu Tian simply ran a hand through his hair and sighed in response. "Looks like you're really clueless. Do you know what forwarding is?" By this point, the weight on the crazy officer's head had lost its fight to stay in place. He aimed the gun directly at Chu Tian and shouted, "So what? With money, you think you can do whatever you want." Not only did Chu Tian remain unfazed, but he also started examining the gun in his hand. This gun feels shockingly real. Suddenly, a crowd of people rushed over, clearly excited. Earlier, Tian Feifei mentioned that this was a filming location and anyone could stop by to watch, so I came right away. Sure enough, it wasn't a letdown. More people showed up, and the atmosphere around here became much livelier. They quickly surrounded Officer Yuan, causing him to frown. This police uniform looks so real. I saw it in Cao Blue's live stream, and it turns out the filming is this realistic. Chu Tian tilted his head and smiled, apologizing but with a hint of sarcasm toward the officer. "I can boldly say that having money really does let you do whatever you want." After a while, Biluo seemed to recover. She rubbed her head with her hand and said, "The effects of the medication have finally worn off." That Chu Tian guy. Then Biluo turned to Mao Lai, who was standing behind her, and asked, "Is everything all set? I bet Chu Tian can't be laughing anymore, right?" The old man, with a sinister smile, replied confidently, "With my help, there's no way this can go wrong." Biluo was pleased with Mao Li's answer. She reached behind her to grab her phone and called Chu Tian, wanting him to know the consequences of messing with her. But something happened that made her face darken in surprise. "Why is my phone?" she said, confused. She realized her phone had turned into a toy phone, bright pink, and with a Peppa Pig design. Biluo lost her temper. She screamed in anger, "He swapped out my phone." Her scream echoed throughout the house. On Chu Tian's side, 3 phones were broadcasting live. Chu Tian assessed the situation before turning to Cecilia and saying earlier, "I realized how Biluo's plan wasn't simple, so I made a quick decision to livestream using her phone, plus Tian Feifei's repost." The crowd that showed up was indeed large. With his hands casually tucked into his pockets, he spoke with a proud expression. Then, Chu Tian picked up the contract, looking pleased as he said, "Now I can sign a contract with peace of mind." He took out a pen and confidently signed his name on side B, while Cao Biluo was on side A. At that moment, a notification appeared on the system. "Mission: collect top 3 streamers minus 2 out of 3 completed." With his arms crossed and a confident smile, Chu Tian said smugly, "Just one more person left. This is too easy." Next, he stood in front of the screen, flashing a bright smile, and clearly announced, "Did you all enjoy this thrilling outdoor live stream? Remember, I'm TNT and Chu from the Salty Fish live stream. Hit follow, like, save the video, and tomorrow we'll have a lucky draw." The number of viewers on his live stream skyrocketed to an impressive 1.5 million. People in the chat were buzzing with excitement about Chu Tian. This is the TNT and Chu who topped the gifting leaderboard last time. Everyone, hurry up and join in. The gifts he gave to Tian Feifei are actually really generous, and she's genuine, no fake antics. Chu Tian read the pile of comments, and his nose seemed to puff up even more. He smugly rubbed his chin and said, "That's right, I gathered all this myself, but the views are still a little low." Suddenly, the loud sound of a gunshot rang out from somewhere, and everyone screamed and ran away in fear. That was Officer Yuan again. He looked at Chu Tian and said, "All right, I won't shoot you, but right now we want to search your car." Chu Tian wasn't scared by his words. On the contrary, he looked happy and seemed to be thinking about something. "Oh, this is a great opportunity to show off." Then he quickly said, "Officer, please don't search it. So many people are watching the live stream." After that, Officer Yuan leaned in close to Chu Tian, speaking arrogantly. "You've crossed Calbilio. Just wait, things are about to get bad for you." He went inside, grabbed the phone from the shelf, and threw it decisively to the ground, frowning as he ordered, "Everyone, get in the car and start searching." As soon as he finished, all the officers climbed into Chu Tian's car and began the search. But instead of looking scared, Chu Tian patted Officer Yuan on the shoulder and said, "Thanks, man." He was left confused, wondering why is this kid acting like everything's fine just because it changed. Next, Officer Yuan arrogantly said, "So, what now? You want to beg? Let me tell you, it's too late for that." But Chu Tian, with a face full of guilt, replied, "Officer, smashing my live stream phone is only making more people want to know what happened." He turned his back to the people around him, facing Officer Yuan directly with a confident attitude, saying, "Right now, everyone here is helping me live stream this." Yuan's face went pale with fear, but he tried to stay calm and said, "So what? You're about to be arrested anyway." As soon as he finished speaking, another officer popped his head in and reported, "Boss, there's a suspicious suitcase here. It looks just like the one that went missing." Officer Yuan grinned and ordered it to be opened. A wicked smile spread across his face as he thought, "This is something my men planted. There's no way you'll escape now." When the suitcase was opened, a blinding light shone out, and whatever was inside left the other officers stunned and confused. Even Officer Yuan, with his cruel demeanor, furrowed his brows, staring intently, waiting for what would happen next. Outside, he still had no idea what was really going on. Inside, he smugly said, "Chu Tian, this is solid evidence. What else do you have to say?" At this point, Chu Tian looked remorseful and said, "I regret. I shouldn't have cared so much about studying." Seeing Chu Tian speak like this, Officer Yuan glanced nervously at the box in the officer's hand. Inside were just 2 books. Both of them froze, their faces darkening as they looked at each other, clearly uncomfortable. Then he angrily shouted, "What is this? Where's the bribe money?" At this moment, Chu Tian raised his hand, scratching his head innocently, and said, "Bribe money." "What bribe money?" Next, Officer Yuan, completely enraged, lost control. Clearly, he had just found the bribe money hidden in Chu Tian's car. Chu Tian, with a serious expression and a hint of danger in his eyes, looked at him and said, "I think he just got the order from you to frame me." Hearing this, Officer Yuan couldn't control his emotions any longer. He pulled out his gun and pointed it at Chu Tian's head, warning him, "Slandering the people's police is a serious crime." Chu Tian, standing tall, placed his hand over the barrel of the gun and firmly replied, "I'll warn you too, put the gun down. If not, it's not just a matter of going to prison." Officer Yuan, full of confidence, said, "Let me ask you, who can stop me now?" But Chu Tian smirked maliciously. "There was no one before, but now there is." He looked toward the figure approaching in the distance, his voice beginning to tremble. The person Chu Tian was waiting for to save him was none other than Director Zhao. Hearing Officer Yuan's threatening words, Director Zhao spoke up, "I wonder if I could stop you." At this, Officer Yuan's face fell and he looked defeated. "Is it Director Zhao from the Discipline Inspection Commission?" With that, he collapsed to his knees. Director Zhao, with his shining badge and upright posture, said, "We just received an internal tip-off. After an investigation, we discovered that you have committed numerous violations of discipline. We will continue the investigation and judgment according to the law. As for the crime, we will not show a mercy." At this moment, Officer Yuan, in a truly cowardly manner, was being escorted while shouting back, "I really don't know where the bribe money is. It was still in my suitcase just a moment ago." Director Zhao looked over at Chu Tian, who was surrounded by people, and asked why. "Was it him who told you to report it to the inspection department earlier?" Wide Awake glanced in that direction and confirmed that it was indeed him. Hearing this, Director Zhao continued, even though he's not very proper, your boyfriend does seem to have some passion. He's not stupid. He handled everything very calmly. When Wai Wai heard this, she was taken aback, as if struck in the chest, and yelled, boyfriend? He's not my boyfriend. He's a suspect in my case. Then Director Zhao turned around, placed a hand on Wai Wai's shoulder, and said, forget it. If you like him, that's your business. I'm going back to the investigation team now. Remember, don't say anything outside. Wai Wai watched her father's retreating figure, puffed her cheeks, and thought to herself that he was such a nosy dad. Meanwhile, Chu Tian was feeling smug, satisfied with what he had done. As expected, the system could not only make money appear, but also make it disappear. This amount of money was just enough to boost his and Tian Feifei's follower counts. The famous livestream ranking list appeared, and Cao Bilio was still in the lead. Right behind was Tian Feifei, with Tian Tian Chu just making it into the ranks. When Chu Tian saw his name in the top 3, he was pleased and said with satisfaction, mission accomplished. Then his face lit up with excitement, and his eyes sparkled as he looked at the system's leaderboard. Here it comes, here it comes. I wonder what the reward will be. Could it be the plus version of the X-ray glasses where I can see through people's clothes? The system's board appeared and began loading information. The reward for this mission was either starting the main storyline or unlocking a personal vault. Chu Tian looked at the system's board, puzzled. What's the main storyline mission and a vault too? After a brief moment of hesitation, Chu Tian chose the first option to start the main storyline mission. The scene shifted into a tall building in the middle of the city in the morning. An unknown person was on the phone, saying that he suddenly felt a sense of danger. He smiled ambiguously as if waiting for something. This could get interesting. After Chu Tian made his choice, the system displayed main storyline mission 1. The hardest part is the beginning. The task was to establish a company, expand the team, determine the office location, and complete a business transaction. The reward would be determined based on the completion rating, with a 100% completion rate required to earn the reward. Chu Tian was wearing an apron, sitting on a chair, lost in thought. He hadn't expected the main task to be so open-ended, with no specific requirements. Now that he had technically set up a company with 2 employees, the only thing missing was a location for the office. Those 2 employees, though, were none other than Bilio and Zilin. After thinking for a moment, he smiled widely and confidently assured himself that he would soon be rich. Just as he was caught up in the excitement, someone slammed a bottle of soda down on the table. It seemed like Chu Tian had been lost in his daydreams for so long that he kept the customer waiting to the point of almost making them cry. The customer finally spoke, pleading, please, can you process my payment? The two exchanged an awkward glance. Chu Tian scratched his head and said, sorry, I got distracted. Feeling a bit upset, Chu Tian thought to himself, his heart sinking. After completing so many tasks, why did he still have to work just to make ends meet? He couldn't help but feel it was a bit unfair. Just then, someone walked over, accidentally slipped on the floor, and let out a loud scream. A clumsy girl dropped all the water on the floor. Her belongings scattered everywhere, and she herself fell and hurt her body. The convenience store owner heard some strange noises from inside, so he went in to check and saw this scene. He immediately got angry and shouted, Shan Dojo. Then, pointing at the girl named Dojo, he yelled, why are you causing trouble again? Everything you do just makes things worse for everyone else. She looked frightened, trembling as she said, I'm sorry, boss. Hearing Dojo's apology, he glared at her with a dangerous look, leaned in close and said, you tell me, what do you think should be done now? She nervously replied, I'm sorry, boss. I'll pay for the damages, then bowed her head and pleaded, please don't fire me. The store owner, with a wicked expression, immediately deducted half of her monthly salary and smirked. He was also planning to make things worse. Come to my office later, I have a few things to discuss with you. Chu Tian watched the whole thing unfold, looking confused as he stared at the owner. Seeing this, the owner snapped, Chu Tian, what are you staring at? Keep staring and I'll dock your pay too. He quickly stormed into the next room and slammed the door shut in frustration. Dubuduba walked over to Chu Tian looking guilty and said, Style Tian, I'm sorry. I got you into trouble too. But he wasn't angry. Instead, he patted her head and smiled, saying, it's okay. What else can we do? We're the 2 poor kids at school, just helping each other out. Hearing this, Dujo happily looked at Chu Tian with sparkling eyes as if inviting him. I'll head to the boss's office first. After work, let's go eat together. I still have a half-off discount voucher. Chu Tian's face turned a little red as he sighed. Angel Kian Dujo is definitely an angel. The sleazy shop owner was still peeking out, watching their conversation. His creepy smile made him look like a pervert. Dujo nervously entered the office, pleading with a scared look, Boss, what's going on? Please don't fire me. I'll work harder. The shop owner leered at her with a lustful gaze and replied with an ambiguous tone. Well, that depends on whether you understand the situation. Qian Duoduo was terrified. Her eyes filled with surprise, but she felt powerless against someone like him. Then, suddenly a loud snap echoed through the room. Out of nowhere, a cash register appeared floating above the shop owner. It quickly fell right on his head, crushing him. He screamed in pain, furious at what had just happened. Chu Tian, do you want to be fired too? The shop owner yelled. So it's you. You showed up like a hero. Chu Tian calmly replied, fire me, then fire me. The shop owner arrogantly pointed at Chu Tian, shouting, you're fired. Get out of here. Chu Tian, stunned, pointed at himself and said, me? I think you've got something wrong. He then confidently declared the one being fired is you. This place now belongs to me. The shop owner froze. Are you saying you bought this place? How is that possible? Chu Tian grabbed Duojuo's hand and pointed at the shop owner. If you don't believe me, just give them a call and ask. The shop owner called to ask, his tone extremely humble. Yes, hello, shareholder. Yes, it's fine, no problem. Chu Tian didn't pay much attention and just saw Duojuo out. After letting Duojuo go, Chu Tian turned back and asked, so, what's the matter? Anything else you want to say? The man's face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot from sheer anger. Without saying a word, he threw a watch at Chu Tian. He gently dodged it. The man screamed in fury. You're trying to fool me. I just asked the shareholder and the shop hasn't been transferred. Now it was Chu Tian's turn to feel awkward. He was caught off guard. Then Chu Tian chuckled. Why didn't I tell you to ask the shareholder? The man, enraged, demanded, don't play games with me. If not the shareholder, who else would you ask? Chu Tian then handed him a piece of paper. Here, call this number. The man, both threatening and furious, picked up the phone to dial. If you don't give me a satisfying answer today, I'll take you to the police. Behind him, Chu Tian calmly smiled, waiting for the drama to unfold. The shop owner arrogantly made the call. Hello, this is. Meanwhile, Chu Tian raised the phone to his ear, wearing a smug smile. Then Chu Tian casually answered the call. Hello, boss. It's Chu Tian. Hearing that, the man, still confused, turned to look. The two men locked eyes, their gazes intense. Then the guy angrily grabbed a chair and lifted it up. Are you trying to mess with me again? The shop owner raised the chair, intending to hit Chu Tian. Let's see if I can knock you out. Suddenly, he froze when he realized something. The weapon he was holding to strike had disappeared, and even a few strands of his hair were gone. At that moment, Chu Tian smirked and said, That's right, I didn't buy this shop. But behind you, there's an excavator, and a wall of the building has been torn down. What kind of land clearing is this? Chu Tian dramatically declared again, But I did buy the land. He took a slight jump, wearing his branded slippers. The scene showed Chu Tian with his arms wide open, speaking from a high place like a newly graduated CEO. From now on, this place will be the headquarters of TNT and Chu Company, he said, and I'll need an excavator to take you up to the top of the bus with style. Chu Tian casually lay back on a lounge chair, holding a bottle of Coca-Cola, completely satisfied. The shop owner standing below could only cry as he watched his business being torn down in an instant. Suddenly, Chu Tian called down to Duojuo, who was standing below. Did you study architecture? Qian Duojuo was a bit confused but still nodded. Chu Tian had been waiting for this moment, so he quickly extended his hand to recruit her. Join my company and become an architect, he said. The system's voice then echoed. Main storyline mission. Everything has a difficult beginning. Completion level, 11.637%. At another moment, Zilin sat in a chair and glanced toward Chu Tian. Chu Tian, I get it, she said. She scrolled through her phone to check the rankings and then spoke again. The real identity of TNT and Chu, the owner of the company that signed a contract with me. He's the one who asked me to forward the bonus to him. Chu Tian wasn't worried about this issue at all. Getting discovered was no big deal. I didn't try to hide it, he admitted openly. That's right, I am the boss. But just then, Zilin, ignoring his admission, interrupted and said, It's good that you admit it, because the boss is your dad. Hearing that, Chu Tian was left sweating and frozen in place. Zilin continued, I've realized you're a little rich kid, so I need to tell you something. Chu Tian stood there, dumbfounded, thinking to himself, rich kid, more like my dad's broke. Teacher Zilin, pulling out a stack of documents, began to lecture her student. Even though I'm considered an employee of your dad's, as a teacher, I still have to remind you. She handed back the test paper, on which his name, Chu Tian, was written along with a score of 0. As she spoke, she both guided and warned him, saying, Your practical score is almost nothing. If you keep this up, you won't be able to graduate. Zilin seriously reminded him, as a rich kid, first, you don't need to worry about food. Chu Tian immediately thought to himself, last month, I didn't even get enough to eat. Zilin continued with her list. Second, you don't need to worry about clothes. Hearing this, Chu Tian felt like crying, remembering his torn shirt, his flip-flops, and the old pair of home shorts. My denim shorts are about to turn light blue from washing. She went on, third, you don't need to worry about finding a job. Chu Tian felt like a knife was being twisted in his heart, and tears started flowing like rivers. Just yesterday, he had been fired by his boss. Looks like he really didn't need to work anymore. Noticing his unusual expression, Zilin quickly added, you should really take some time to participate in practical activities to earn your credits. As if waiting for just that moment, Chu Tian grabbed her hand and promised, Ms. Chen, I recently found a plot of land where a company is being built. I'll go over there later to help carry bricks. She blushed and pulled her hand back. Well, that's good. Just be careful and stay safe. After that, Chu Tian said goodbye to Zilin at the door. Goodbye. I'm off to work now. As he walked away, she still reminded him, remember, make sure to do your internship. Otherwise, you won't graduate. Chu Tian quickly slowed down and disappeared from sight. His conversation with Zilin had been overheard by a familiar figure. Jiang Hao had caught part of it and muttered softly, can't graduate, huh? Then Jiang Hao let out an evil laugh. Don't even think about getting those credits, Chu Tian. It seemed like nothing had changed. He was still the same helpless kid calling out for his ma. He immediately called his father, complaining that he was running low on money. After a brief conversation, on the other end of the line, Jiang Hao's father, Chairman Jiang Dahao, hung up with a heavy sigh. A voice nearby spoke up. Your son needs money. You can't just ignore that. The man forced a smile and tried to brush it off. Of course, I'll send him money. It's nothing. We're not lacking anything. The other man calmly asked, but I heard that Mr. Jiang's assets have been frozen lately. Where are you getting the money for your son? Dahao felt a pang of panic and quickly denied it. Who said that? The person in front of him calmly stated the painful truth. Furthermore, your wife secretly divorced you and took all of your liquid assets. Dao's personal life had been exposed, and he was furious. Are you secretly investigating me? The well-dressed young man remained confident as he handed over his business card. Once you've thought it through, accept my offer. If not. In the second half of his sentence, he dropped the business card onto the floor, adding a threat. Don't blame me if something happens to your restaurant. Dahao, unsure whether to feel terrified or angry, shakily picked up the business card. It turned out the man's name was He Fanjuo. Chu Tian wiped the sweat from his forehead, looking very satisfied. Carrying a brick really did help to unwind. Duju stepped forward to announce that it was time for dinner. As he stood in line, he hoped there would be chicken legs in his meal. But when his turn came, Duju handed him his food with a hesitant expression, your meal. Chu Tian, still calm, responded, no need to be formal. We're all like family here. Yet when he held the food container, something felt off. It turns out someone else had already snatched it and was now yelling at him. What are you looking at? You in line? If you don't want trouble, you should listen to me. Duju, afraid, tried to say something in defense, but the man arrogantly mocked him back. I haven't seen a girl like you before. Want to hang out with me? Chu Tian was genuinely angered by the rude man. Just then, a hand was placed on his shoulder, and a young man whispered in his ear, Stay calm, you can't get involved with him. Hearing this, Chu Tian was curious about the identity of the person. The other man only hinted that he was not someone easy to provoke, implying he was connected to the underworld. Suddenly, he walked up, causing both of them to jump in surprise, muttering, Be careful, I'll deal with both of you. As soon as he said that, the man was shocked by something on his phone. Even though he had to leave quickly, he didn't forget to threaten them. I'll come back and take care of you too. While Chu Tian gave him a disdainful look, the man standing next to him was clearly scared. Realizing that Chu Tian might have something planned, he quickly warned him, don't go. If anyone sees you, you'll lose money. However, Chu Tian immediately reassured him. He's the one in trouble, not me. Here, I'm the boss. After seeing Chu Tian leave, the man was filled with doubts. As they walked for a while, the man ran into someone in a hidden corner. Anything you need today? Shan Ye asked, blowing out a puff of smoke. Some of our guys are at the construction site. You'll see them soon. Chu Tian, hiding behind a wall, slowly realized these people were up to something. He immediately thought of Cecilia, who was receiving treatment and didn't have anyone with her. Meanwhile, at the construction site, a group of thugs had started to show up. To protect Dujo, the guy from earlier had been beaten badly. Please just go, he pleaded. Despite his pleas, they showed no mercy and kept attacking, mocking him as they did. Look at this fool, too scared to fight back. He said if we hit him, we'd end up crippled. What a joke. Then someone among them found a shovel. I wonder if this will hurt. The man's face instantly changed and Dujo was horrified. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the construction site. A yellow bus barreled through the fence and appeared on the scene. Chu Tian sat in the bus and sneered at the group of people. I wonder, does it hurt when a car hits you? The thug, nearly hit by the bus, was so startled he fell to the ground. Chu Tian walked up to him and asked, Did you start this? The thug stammered in response. So what? Do you even know who my boss is? Just pick up your stuff and go. I don't care. Then from behind the bus, someone spoke up. Since when has no one shown respect to Shan Ya? The person gradually revealed themselves. Shan Ya looked down on Chu Tian's group with a scornful gaze. But when their eyes met, both of them fell silent. It was Chu Tian who broke the silence, smiling as he said, "Long time no see. So you're trying to pick on me now?" The thug suddenly trembled. Why? Why is it you? Chu Tian calmly aimed his tool forward, saying, "Is it you bragging, or have I lost the ability to hold a shovel?" The man, now furious, shouted, "Who do you think you are to act tough in front of Shan Ya?" Chu Tian kept smiling, but the underlying threat in his words was chilling. It was clear he had been through this world with Shan Ya. The thug, unaware, proudly replied, "Of course, who in this area isn't afraid of me?" As soon as the words left his mouth, that foolish head was hit hard as a punishment. It was the first time he'd been humiliated like this, and the man angrily shouted, "Who the heck is tired of living?" But the moment his brain registered who it was, his anger instantly vanished. Behind him stood a small, elderly woman leaning on a cane. This huge, muscular guy, who had been so tough, immediately knelt down as his mother pinched his ear in reprimand. She smacked his back with the cane while scolding. "You little brat, are you saying I'm tired of living? Having a son like you is truly embarrassing. Is there anyone who's afraid of you?" "Well, I'm not. Your mother, that's me, isn't afraid of you." He whimpered, tears and snot all over his face. "Mom, I was wrong. After taking care of things at home, she finally walked over to where you were. Thankfully, you came to pick me up, otherwise my son would have been even more in the wrong." Chu Tian, looking like a wise philosopher, replied solemnly, "Making others happy is my hobby." After the mother and son left, Chu Tian mentioned it was Shan Ya's turn. Shan Ya hesitated, explaining that he had been entrusted by someone else and promised to leave immediately. But Chu Tian stopped him and said, "Now I need you to do something for me. Tell me who gave you the task." Shan Ya's face showed some discomfort, as the world of martial arts had its own rules. Immediately, a bag full of cash was handed over. The so-called rules of the underworld still made Shan Ya feel a bit awkward, as if they weren't entirely appropriate. Then something even bigger than the last item was brought forward for the second time. The rules of the underworld immediately crumbled, and Shan Ya directly pointed to Jiang Hao, even throwing in a few insults. Chu Tian was very pleased with this cooperative attitude. After all, the underworld is a service industry. Then he spoke again. "I'm planning something big soon." Shan Ya was soon given some very shocking information. Elsewhere, Bilio was firmly against something, repeatedly saying it was absolutely not allowed. However, Chu Tian responded unhappily. "How could I not listen to the boss?" She questioned him in frustration, asking why he wanted her to do such a thing. He calmly explained that the client just wanted to have some fun, and her job was to entertain them. Billy stood her ground. "Absolutely not. I can't believe you're the kind of person who would do this." Chu Tian stood up and left, mentioning something about the breach of contract fee, and his smile deepened. It was quite a high amount. Billy blushed, took off her shoes, and cursed at him, "You scoundrel." The shoe didn't even reach him before the door slammed shut, but his parting words could still be heard. "Make sure you're on time tomorrow." At this point, she had no choice but to assign the task to Mao Lai. He, in turn, received orders to ask someone for help. Naturally, Mao Lai strongly opposed it. "No way." Bilio anxiously explained, "Only he can help us because he's the only one who isn't swayed by money." Mao Lai knelt and pleaded with her to reconsider, as once they asked for help, they would be in debt for life. But Bilio angrily shouted, "Since when do you have the right to talk to me like that? You have 1 hour. Call them here right now." The meeting place is set at the nearby drink shop. As soon as Fan Shuo spoke, he was incredibly polite. "Bilio, I've admired you for a long time." She hesitated before replying, his name suddenly ringing in her ears like thunder. Fan Shuo humbly explained that it was because people had shown him respect. After a while, she finally gathered the courage to speak. "The main reason I wanted to meet you today is..." Fan Shuo mysteriously interrupted. "Let me guess, so don't say anything yet." His eyes sparkled with curiosity. "Let me see what secret you're hiding in your heart." The strange look in his eyes made Bilio feel as though he had truly uncovered the black hole in her soul. When she was little, she went through a very serious accident. The people around her were like ghosts, constantly gossiping behind her back, and there were even a few thugs who were full of themselves, blocking her path. But the little girl managed to take them all down with just a brick. From then on, her life gradually became anything but normal. Fan Shuo had seen everything and immediately exposed it, orphaned, wandering the streets, then rising to dominate the underworld. Your secrets are quite interesting. Bilio felt a bit uneasy that her secrets were so clearly understood. He can respond directly but emphasized, "You owe me a favor." Hearing this, she guessed that her request had been accepted. Fanjua smiled and replied, "Of course, you want to deal with Chu Tian, right? Lately, a lot of people have asked me for the same thing. It's been a while since I've faced an opponent like him. Let's see what he's made of." After that conversation, time quickly passed and it was already 7 p.m. Billy was sat at the dining table, muttering in frustration, "They actually want me to entertain guests? How disgusting." Her mind raced with the thought of having to lower herself to serve drinks and amuse them. It made her feel really uncomfortable, so she quickly reassured herself, with Tay here, Chu Tian won't succeed. Once everything was settled, she signaled to Fanshuo that all was good. He pressed the earphones in his hand and softly said, "Got it." Then he ordered, "Go and hold Chu Tian off for a minute." Jiang Hao didn't hesitate. He immediately followed orders. A flashlight was quickly turned on, aiming to uncover Chu Tian's secrets. At the front gate, Chu Tian was casually whistling as he walked. Just as he was about to enter, Jiang Hao suddenly appeared and bumped his shoulder. Chu Tian, a bit confused, asked, "What's going on?" He harshly retorted, "Why are you eating at this restaurant today?" Chu Tian replied somewhat teasingly, "None of your business." Seeing the other man about to leave, Jiang Hao urgently shouted, "Wait a second." At this point, Chu Tian had lost all patience. Jiang Hao stiffly said, "This restaurant is mine. I can tell the kitchen to give you special treatment." Naturally, Chu Tian turned coldly and walked away, only asking to have the receipt printed after his meal. Then suddenly he yelled, "What you're doing is illegal." His shout was so loud it caught the attention of all the staff inside. Chu Tian was now even more curious. Illegal? How? Jiang Hao pointed to the billiard room and said that using artists to entertain guests was wrong. Before the accusation was made, Chu Tian unhappily explained, "My work is really busy." However, Jiang Hao, almost frenzied, stepped forward, not believing it. "But Shen, you clearly told me about your plan." The door to the private room, which was supposed to be hosting a wrong activity, slowly creaked open. Jiang Hao, upon seeing inside, was left speechless, shocked. "Are these your guests?" Billiu, poor thing, was surrounded by a group of mischievous kids. Chu Tian, feeling smug, asked, "Isn't this meal fun?" The other person, disgusted, replied, "These are your guests. They're all just kids." Chu Tian, matching the same attitude, answered, "So what?" In the end, Jiang Hao had no choice but to walk away in frustration. He then turned to look at Billiu, still dealing with the kids. She was perfect for the role, such a lovely princess, but why was she crying? When did that start? What was going on in his head? Fan Zhuo, standing outside, was also frustrated after confirming the situation. What exactly was going on here? The binoculars, which should have enhanced his abilities, were no longer useful. All he could see were binary numbers inside his body. Once the kids left, Chu Tian spoke up. "Do you realize your mistake now?" Billiu, with her head down, quietly admitted her fault. Chu Tian, still eating his pastry, scolded her a few more times. Her mind was truly a mess. She actually thought I made her do that. Being scolded like that made her feel a bit embarrassed, but it was because he didn't explain clearly. Chu Tian smiled wickedly because tomorrow he could finally start the business. After leaving the restaurant, he began analyzing the challenge of this task, which was building the company and recruiting employees. Suddenly, someone bumped into him and his thoughts vanished. Fan Zhuo quickly said, "Sorry, are you okay?" Chu Tian reassured him that he was fine. Then, as if nothing had happened, he got into his car and left like usual. Fan Zhuo stood there, a bit deep in thought, watching him. Being this close, he could see more clearly. But what did it really mean? His curiosity was sparked. Chu Tian had certainly surprised him. Soon after, Jiang Hao also came over to ask what to do next. Fan Zhuo's smile turned even more devious than a mobster's. To deal with Chu Tian, he'd have to go after the people around him first. The dark atmosphere that evening was quickly pushed away by the light from their side. Zilin, as soon as she picked up the phone, asked the doctor about her father's recovery, but just a second later, the smile on her face disappeared. Then the phone at Dojuo's house rang. She excitedly told the person on the other end that she could now pay the rent. But just like Zilin, the expression on Dojuo's face also darkened. This time, the incident had happened at Billiu's place. As soon as she picked up the phone, she politely introduced herself, but for some reason, the panic continued in this situation. "Billiu, I already know," she slowly confirmed. She was a bit worried about Chu Tian because she had no idea how he would handle things this time. At the same time, he was continuously rubbing his head, looking at the phone on the table, furious that no one was answering. Seeing 3 resignation letters and 3 piles of money on the table, Chu Tian felt very uncomfortable and, without saying a word, resigned. When he saw the progress bar for the task drop, he became even more anxious. What should he do now? Just then, the phone displayed a call from the contractor. Chu Tian hesitated and repeated a few broken words. "Racing tonight. I didn't expect that would unlock the racing task." This made him look forward to the reward. Then, a knock at the door was heard. Chu Tian curiously opened it to check. "Who is it?" Fanju appeared and introduced himself as Xiao Long, here for an interview. Remembering that he had posted a job ad, Chu Tian invited him in. As Xiao Long passed by, he noticed that the number inside Chu Tian had decreased. However, Fanju didn't pay much attention to it, as the upcoming racing final already promised danger. The referee began to introduce. This race course is longer than any before. Starting from the center, it goes straight to the East City, and then heads west to the finish line. Chu Tian casually commented, "I've heard about the rules this time. Anyway, if I lose, I won't lose much, but if I win, it's a bonus." The referee continued reading the rules. This final is like last year's, with no restrictions on tactics or strategies. The winner will become a member of the elite club, while the losers must hand over their most valuable assets. Chu Tian immediately frowned at the rule. No one had warned him about this. Meanwhile, the referee was getting excited. "Is everyone ready?" Chu Tian encouraged the driver. "I'm counting on you. My company's still in the early stages, so I can't afford to give it away." The driver, who was none other than Fanju, simply smiled and replied, "Of course." However, deep down, he was just hoping to see Chu Tian lose his company. Quickly, the checkered flag waved and the starting signal was given. The supercars whirred to life and sped down the road. The live broadcast screen started with a commentator's voice. "We can see that the reigning champion, the Queen of the Night, is in the lead. This year, many are trying to break her undefeated streak, but I've just learned that in the previous round, she lost to a mysterious racer. That car was a modified model from the elite club." The screen immediately understood and turned toward the Yulin bus, but strangely, it was moving very slowly. That was truly odd, almost like the race between the tortoise and the hare. Inside the bus, even though Fanju had pointed out that the speed was very slow, he wasn't worried at all. Chu Tian simply took out his phone and reassured him, "Don't worry, I got everything under control." Then, after picking up the phone, he said he wanted to call the police, but unfortunately, there was no signal in this area. Fanju gave him a satisfied look and said, "You've arranged everything. Actually, it's me who's arranged everything. The whole city's phone signal is down tonight." However, Chu Tian wasn't scared at all. He was just thinking about using a backup plan. He pointed to a road and asked Fanju to take it. Fanju was confused because that road led to the southern city. Chu Tian nodded and said, "That's right, we need to take the detour before we can speed up." At the same time, the other supercars had arrived at the check-in spot to score points. Jiang Hao was extremely pleased. Thinking that with such a slow pace, there was no way Chu Tian could make a comeback. He grinned even more, happy that he had already gotten his points stamped. However, to his surprise, strange snowflakes suddenly began to fall. Even though it was the middle of summer, the white snow kept falling more and more right in front of him. Right after that, a car horn blared, causing Jiang Hao to jump and look back. Chu Tian's bus is speeding towards the checkpoint. The slow pace from earlier had shifted into lightning speed. He happily rubbed the snow globe in his hand and quickly picked up speed, saying, "Just let the snow fall." Then, Chu Tian casually zoomed past a few supercars that had lost control because of the snow. The other racers were starting to hesitate, unsure of what to do. Jiang Hao yelled like a child, "This time, we need to hold on tight. Why is there suddenly snow falling?" The small planes above were dropping something white. Jiang Hao stared at it for a while before realizing, could it be? Chu Tian confidently declared that artificial snow was his secret weapon for acceleration. Fan Shua was also quite surprised. He hadn't expected that Chu Tian would go to the Weather Bureau and the manufacturing plant in South City. Here's how it happened. Chu Tian firmly declared that he would use all resources to create a snowstorm. "Money doesn't matter," he said. Then, when they arrived at the production plant, he demanded special tires be installed for driving in the snow. Just thinking about it made Fan Shua nervous. After all, the company was still new, and it wasn't worth it for Chu Tian to spend money like this. Later, he still carefully reminded Chu Tian that the road ahead wouldn't have any more snow. Maybe they went to the city center to bribe the referee. As for the consequences, he kept that to himself and later let my people catch them in the act. What a waste. Chu Tian strongly disagreed and ordered him to drive north. Fan Shua didn't understand and kept trying to convince him to go to the city center. Forget everything else, Chu Tian firmly said they can win. Fan Shua didn't say anything else. Seeing him a bit down, Chu Tian encouraged him. "It's your first day on the job. You might have to perform well." Their bus veered off the racetrack and turned north. At the finish line, the host excitedly announced, "We're almost there. The results are coming in." The camera started recording as two supercars appeared. The top team had arrived, but where was Su King? She was hesitant because someone like Chu Tian couldn't be this straightforward. But by letting the car behind go first, they hadn't encountered any traps. After thinking for a moment, Su King decided to ignore it and hit the boost button. The supercar shot forward like a swift leopard, weaving through two cars before jumping ahead. The change in order brought the host back to his senses. Turns out she was saving her energy. She's definitely going to win. It seemed like everything was settled, but then a loud, sudden noise startled both of them. Su King's car gradually started to lose direction, signaling an ambush. She was furious at the absurd appearance of the bullet train right in the middle of the racetrack. Is this all part of your plan, Chu Tian? She thought to herself. But even after the train passed, I'll still be in the lead. Suddenly, Chu Tian's excited voice echoed, Isn't that Su, my girlfriend? Your bus is actually tailing the bullet train. As soon as they crossed paths, Chu Tian teased, There's a saying, behind every successful man is a woman silently supporting him. Looks like that's you. Just as he was about to disappear into the distance, he shouted, If your car is snow, then mine is ice. Then, Chu Tian gave the command for his car to transform and take off. The engine, which had been holding the wheels in place, started to open up. Once it was released, the car followed his orders and sped off the track. Su King stared blankly at the back of his car. Pulling a stunt like that, using a bullet train to tow his car was just too showy. Impressive. Turning a car into a bullet train, that's your secret move. With that thought, she reached for the hidden system in the middle of the steering wheel. Su King pressed a button beneath it, preparing her own countermove. Following her command, the supercar started shedding its outer parts. Then, only one wheel and the engine parts remained. Su King drove the motorcycle, which had transformed thanks to her abilities, and began heading back to the racetrack. Using the stretch of road behind her, she built up some compressed air to speed up, and Su King believed she was going to win. On the bus with Chu Tian, Fan Shuo was still in shock after the high-speed train had carried the passenger car. He really wanted to know who this person was because he couldn't understand how someone could come up with such strange tricks. Chu Tian, somewhat arrogantly, sighed and said, A true master is always lonely. There's just no one to compete with. Suddenly, a figure appeared close by. When Chu Tian turned his head, he saw Su King chasing after him on her motorcycle. She confidently called out, For you, I've already prepared a backup plan. This time, you'll be left with no choice but to surrender. But all Chu Tian could think about was the alluring black color of her motorcycle. Fan Shuo couldn't understand what she meant by the black thing, but one thing that concerned him more was why they hadn't increased their speed yet. Chu Tian calmly separated his chopsticks and prepared to eat, because to him they had already won. Su King shared the same thought. She also believed that victory was in her grasp. Su King raced her motorcycle past the finish line. After the flag was waved, the champion was officially determined. Everyone was happy for Su King for evolving her vehicle and becoming the champion once again. After that, the female staff member also announced that the next vehicle to cross the finish line was the Ghost Bus. When Su King saw Chu Tian, she mocked him, saying, You lost. Your bus is just rolling along in front of everyone. The host jokingly added, It's because the driver couldn't handle the shame and ran away. Chu Tian then turned around and called out, Come on, let's go. Let's get to the front and collect our salaries. His shout attracted a crowd of people running after him. Even the flag bearer abandoned their post to join in. The scene left everyone a bit confused. Su King now realized that this wasn't the real finish line. Chu Tian was thoroughly enjoying the feeling of being cheered on by the crowd, shouting, Boss Chu, the best in the world. Su King, feeling irritated, didn't want to say anything more. Suddenly, Fan Shuo came up and asked, I'm really curious. Why did you and Jiang Hao get involved with Chu Tian? She coldly snapped, None of your business. You with the #1 eye of the world can see everything. Why can't you handle Chu Tian? He honestly explained that he couldn't see through him and even had a bit of respect for him. Seeing the numbers rise, Fan Shuo was really curious about what they would represent. Just then, Chu Tian walked over to compliment him, offering to add a chicken leg to Fan Shuo's lunchbox. As soon as Su King saw him, she immediately questioned, Did you invite all these people here? Chu Tian responded clearly, They're now employees of my company, and here's something that will make you even happier. The score is going up. Then Fan Shuo overheard that Chu Tian wanted to rehire those who would resign. He was a bit confused and asked, You're inviting them back, but didn't they say? At that moment, Chu Tian caught on to the main point. He instantly felt a sense of regret. I messed up. I didn't know their situation, he thought. Chu Tian is testing me. So he quickly corrected himself. But didn't they say they wanted to congratulate the boss? Chu Tian returned to his usual cheerful smile. Giving out money is meant to make everyone happy. Then he told Fan Shuo to get in the car so they could have together. But as he turned away, Chu Tian was sure that this person named Xiao Long wasn't simple. Xiao Long, on the other hand, was thinking the same thing. Chu Tian is no simple guy. The car quickly drove off under her watch. Su King, feeling frustrated, slammed her fist against her motorcycle to release some anger. Damn, she thought, I feel terrible right now. And I failed again. Her slender hands suddenly showed a surprising strength. It's time to teach Chu Tian a lesson, she decided. The bus carrying the two of them soon reached a different location. Chu Tian carefully opened the door and stepped inside. After taking a good look around, he was surprised. Bilio was trying to explain that he was no longer involved with the underworld. YY was very serious as she explained that all the evidence this time pointed directly at her and she couldn't escape it. Sensing the tense atmosphere, you asked, "What's going on?" To your surprise, YY turned her suspicion on you. "Chu Tian, you're involved with Bilio too. Are you mixed up with the mafia?" Next, Bilio accused you, insisting that you were trying to frame her. In that situation, Chu Tian remained surprisingly lighthearted. Was this really the legendary battlefield of the underworld? As soon as he sat down, someone came over. "Cecilia, you finally made it. Looks like everything's unfolding just as I predicted." Bilio awkwardly apologized for having hypnotized her. Cecilia was very gracious, explaining that she didn't take it personally and was now focusing on being Chu Tian's personal assistant. He happily put his arm around her and said, "Let's go together and catch those criminals on the run." As they stepped out the door, Bilio suddenly thought that Chu Tian must have suspected something. But he had done it because he had a feeling something was going to happen, so he had taken precautions by sending people to monitor the movements in various places. Cecilia also spoke up, mentioning that she had found a few people who had been hiding their identities, and after using public transport, they were tracked and showed signs of being up to something. For example, Lai Sangxiang, an investor and one of the shareholders of the cockfighting channel, is also a criminal and has gone into hiding. Chu Tian carefully asked, "Have you investigated him thoroughly?" The other person immediately nodded and replied, "He'll be playing an online game tonight." When Chu Tian heard about the game, he seemed a bit intrigued. His foot instinctively pressed down harder on the ground. Chu Tian shouted excitedly, "Speaking of games, isn't that virtual currency? That's my specialty." Then the group started to get into the car. When Fanju tried to follow, he was stopped. Chu Tian gently made an excuse, saying, "We're just going to play a game, so you don't need to follow us." However, Fanjuo still tried to explain, "I can drive. Don't worry, I'll head towards Cecilia and tell Fanjuo to rest." The other person kept insisting, "I can help too. I'll do whatever the boss says." But in his mind, he had sinister intentions, maybe to mess things up. Chu Tian didn't respond right away. Instead, he sized him up from head to toe. Finally, he just instructed, "Prepare some foot wash and close the car door." The car rolled off, leaving Fanjuo behind. Inside the car, Billu also sat thinking, looking out the window. He decided to tell Chu Tian about Fanjuo's real background. Chu Tian heard this and guessed, "Is Fanjuo involved with the cockfighting channel?" Billu answered seriously, "It's very possible." What surprised her was that Chu Tian suddenly burst into laughter, as if he had anticipated this all along. She hesitantly asked, "Then why did you still?" Chu Tian was extremely confident, insisting that Fanjuo wouldn't pull any tricks while beside him. The scene shifted to a room lined with golden tiles, where skilled fingers began tapping away at the keyboard. After finishing off his 23rd opponent, Sangxiang shouted, "No one will dare challenge me now." However, a challenge notification suddenly popped up, making him rethink and believe it was from someone who didn't think things through. Chu Tian's character appeared on the screen. Sangxiang sneered, seeing it was just a beginner player with basic gear. He decided to click and finish it off with one move, die. At that moment, Chu Tian's character confidently raised its sword. Sangxiang laughed loudly, thinking the victory was too easy. "You're going up against a VIP player like me. I see you." But then, he suddenly fell silent, his face frozen in shock. Chu Tian's character had gently stepped on him. Without a hint of modesty, Chu Tian demanded a one-on-one match with him. It was the first time Sangxiang had faced such a situation, and he was completely panicked. The guy, furious, started banging on the keyboard and yelled, "How is this possible? My top-tier golden gear can't beat someone with no gear. How can someone without anything kill someone in divine gear? This can't be happening." Chu Tian kept shaking his hips and said, "What do you mean you don't see me wearing anything? Can't you afford my gear?" Looking at the little bird shielding him, Sangxiang suddenly had an epiphany. He immediately realized that it was the ultimate stealth armor with almost no chance of being hit. Then a truth dawned on him late. He wasn't the number one VIP, but the second. Sangxiang anxiously looked at the bank card in his hand. The money was still warm from the transaction. Should he top up? Meanwhile, the notification above his head popped up, suggesting he quit and just become a legend. Hearing that, his competitive side kicked in and he reached for the bank card. No, he couldn't let himself lose. He gritted his teeth, determined not to be defeated. Then the game's shop for the lucky draw was activated, and the cost came to nearly 650,000. The payment code was quickly entered. Sangxiang pressed the keyboard, trying the draw 100 times. Among the many items, one random box lit up with a golden glow. Stangsheng frowned and spoke up. Normally, just getting one golden item would be great. But of course, he wasn't satisfied and decided to try again. So once more, Stangsheng said, "Do it again." A few minutes later, still the same command, "Do it again." The guy's face showed frustration, but he still chose to try again. After a long while, Stangsheng seemed completely drained, groaning, unable to count how many times he tried. "I'm really not okay," the guy yelled, his voice full of desperation and anger. "Why is this happening?" At that moment, his computer pinged with a new message signaling a private chat. Stangsheng was curious. Who could it be? It was Chu Tian, offering to sell the top-tier invisibility armor. The guy was a little irritated, thinking he was about to be charged a hefty price. His pride made him respond loudly. "Whether I win or have to jump off a building, I won't bother with that top-tier invisibility armor." In the recording, Chu Tian calmly explained, "Don't misunderstand, I just need you." After hearing the request, Stangsheng suddenly felt very satisfied. Once his character was equipped with the top-tier armor, he felt like he was on top of the game, like one of the best players. On the other side, Chu Tian was also very pleased with the trade, having gotten what he wanted. Bilu hesitantly asked, "You really don't need that rare gear just for me?" But Chu Tian remained completely calm. "I have plenty of those." On the screen, there were indeed many images of characters wearing top-tier armor. This made her question everything. Chu Tian quickly explained, "That's because you bought the game company." This surprised Bilu a lot. Cecilia was also shocked and exclaimed, "Huh?" Bilu was really taken aback that he had bought the game company. Chu Tian calmly corrected, "To be more precise, I took over the company." She was deeply moved, thinking that Chu Tian had changed the whole TNT and Chu company just for her. The way she said it was a bit confusing to anyone listening. Then a very different expression appeared on Bilu's face. She quietly said, "If you like me this much, and if you really want, I'm not exactly impossible to get." He bluntly called her silly. Changing TNT and Chu is impossible. Cecilia groaned, holding her head, exhausted by his bluntness. Bilu's romantic thoughts seemed to be quickly extinguished. She asked, "So what's going on then?" Chu Tian replied, "Do you remember the rule from the racing competition? The loser has to give up their most valuable asset. I used several subsidiary companies to exchange for 60% of this company's shares. Then had the programmers create an account for me filled with stars. And just like that, an unbeatable account named TNT and Chu was born." Bilu immediately realized that the invisible armor didn't actually exist. Chu Tian couldn't help but laugh as he looked at his phone. He was asking the programmer to change the data again. Meanwhile, Cecilia spoke up, "The invisible armor is what you asked to change in the data." Chu Tian laughed even harder. Lai Sangxiang had paid so much, and since my boss here was happy, I decided to change it for him. Bilu, confused, interrupted, "So, are you saying the fact that you got what you wanted is proof that I'm innocent?" Chu Tian raised his hand to stop her and said, "Of course not." Both girls fell silent at his words. Cecilia shook her head and turned away, not wanting to hear more. Chu Tian, excited, ordered them to move on to the next place. "I've got the list of everyone involved this time from Sangshan," he said as the scene shifted to a very fancy nightclub. To everyone's surprise, Chu Tian was now disguised as a woman sitting on stage. Mr. Zhao immediately asked, "Why have I never seen this girl before?" Xiao Zhang politely responded, "She's a new singer. Just look at that body. Absolutely stunning." Mr. Zhao licked his lips and asked about her face. Xiao Zhang explained, "She never shows her face, but a female coworker secretly took a look and said she's really beautiful." He immediately ordered that the person be brought to a private room. Quickly, Mr. Zhao made his way to an empty room. The tall bodyguards surrounded Chu Tian. He pretended to be weak and asked, "What do you want to do?" They remained silent, reaching out to grab him. Inside the room, Mr. Zhao, unable to wait any longer, wanted to indulge in his desires. Hearing this, Chu Tian gave a smile full of meaning. Mr. Zhao grinned in a sleazy way and asked him to join him in some fun. Chu Tian obediently leaned into his embrace, but Mr. Zhao quickly sensed something was off. The high-heeled shoes Chu Tian was wearing smashed through the floor, and he asked, "Aren't you going to continue? Is it already over?" Chu Tian removed all of his makeup and said, "This is so boring." Mr. Zhao couldn't believe his eyes and asked, "Who are you? Where did the beautiful person go?" Chu Tian, disgusted, shouted, "How dare you ask? Was I not beautiful enough? Didn't I satisfy you? What exactly about me? Maybe not good enough to be a beauty?" Mr. Zhou hesitated and asked, "What are you talking about?" The communication device to the security team was quickly taken out. Mr. Zhao signaled that a pervert had appeared in the room. The bodyguards quickly broke the door and rushed in. Chu Tian was surrounded by his men. Furious, Mr. Zhao wanted to make him pay and feel pain in return. Chu Tian, irritated, threw his wig down and said, "You dare to play, but can't handle it." After shaping his hand into the form of a gun, he challenged, "Come on, let's see who's stronger, my people, or my gun." They looked at him like he was crazy, not sure what to make of it. He was annoyed and shouted, "You dare joke around? Everyone get him." The bodyguards threw punches and rushed forward. Chu Tian raised his hand like a gun and mimicked the sound of gunfire with his mouth. Then he pulled his hand back and pretended it was smoking. Amazingly, the bodyguard actually fell. Next, Chu Tian aimed at the guy on his left. The large, muscular man also dropped to the ground with a loud thud. This time, Chu Tian decided to go for the dual-wheel approach. He became a one-man army, shooting down all the bodyguards by himself. Once he had taken care of the brute, Chu Tian pointed his hand at the man in charge. He pressed his fingers to the man's forehead and said, "Now will you listen to me?" Boss Show hesitated, called him a monster, but agreed to obey in exchange for being spared. Meanwhile, Chu Tian secretly gave a thumbs up to someone outside. The building across from the room seemed to be where he had been looking. Cecilia, holding the sniper rifle, had received praise for her skill. Billu, standing nearby, kept complimenting her talent. However, it was actually just a regular tranquilizer gun. In a corner that no one noticed, someone else had them in their sights. Su King was very nervous, unsure how far Chu Tian would go with this. A group of people stood with their arms crossed in front of him. Chu Tian smiled and said that everyone involved in the case was here now. Wei Wei, somewhat pleased, complimented him, saying that he had done well this time. Billu, blushing, quickly added, "I already said it wasn't my problem." Despite that, Wei Wei still believed that even if it wasn't directly related to her, the situation was definitely more complicated than it seemed. She yelled angrily, "Isn't catching these criminals enough?" Wei Wei shook her head. "Because there's someone else behind all of this, or maybe another force." This made Chu Tian think about the recent cases involving companies using dirty money. Suddenly, Chief Zhou appeared. His reasoning skills were sharp. All the departments were closely following the case, but unfortunately, they still lacked enough evidence. His eyes tightened from the stress. Seeing her father like this, Wei Wei also became serious. Both father and daughter suddenly glanced at Chu Tian. He was a bit confused about why they were looking in that way. Wei Wei, blushing, explained what he means is he wants you to work as an external agent for the investigation. However, in his eyes, that thought was just an excuse to turn him into a spy. She shyly pouted at him, saying, "I told you not to ask others to do this dangerous job." But Director Zhao just laughed and teased, "I know you care about your boyfriend, but this is something we have to see if he agrees to." Chu Tian now spoke in a serious tone. "I think this is too dangerous." He sighed, understanding where Chu Tian was coming from. But then, suddenly, Chu Tian's expression and voice changed. "The payment has to be increased." All four of them were taken aback by his sudden decision. Director Zhou found it quite amusing. Young people should have ambitions. The related files were handed over, and Chu Tian needed to be ready because things could start at any moment. Zhou patted his shoulder confidently. Even though the budget wasn't much, the honor was priceless. Chu Tian firmly said, "When it comes to missions, I've never failed." Now, Director Zhao turned to his daughter and said, "This young man is quite interesting. If the mission succeeds, I'll allow you two to continue seeing each other." Wei Wei blushed, trying to explain and telling him not to say such things. The scene then shifted to another place. As Chu Tian walked, he was mentally calculating. He had finished with Bilio, and now it was time to focus on the battle within the school. Because in the file of Director Zhao, there was a teacher from the school. The person mentioned was the art teacher, Wu Mei. However, the only impression he left on him was one. Wu Mei moved quickly. Chu Tian was extremely unhappy because he dared to pursue Zilin. Thinking that way, he decided he would have to take care of him properly. Zilin was looking outside through the window. She kept checking her phone and thinking about her father. A phone call had come in earlier that day. The doctor anxiously reported that her father's recovery was going well, but he had disappeared from the hospital. The shocking news made Zilin unable to believe it. After all, during his recovery, her father still couldn't walk. The doctor bluntly said that they suspected someone had taken him. Zilin panicked. "I'll be there immediately." Standing in front of the empty hospital bed, she anxiously asked the police officer, "Is there any clue?" The officer shook his head, saying only that a group of people dressed in black had come late at night to kidnap him. As for the motive, the police officer asked, "Do you have any enemies?" Zilin honestly replied, "I did have conflicts with some people, but it wasn't to the extent of kidnapping." At that moment, her phone vibrated. A threatening text message appeared. "Your father is in our hands. Do not contact the police." Seeing the unusual expression on her face, the police officer asked if everything was okay. However, Zilin chose to say, "It's nothing." She made up an excuse that a student was looking for her, so she had to leave early. Thinking back to that moment, Zilin was sure they must be enemies of the Chu Tian family's business. Her personal information had been gone through several times. Should she warn him? But her father was still in their hands. Suddenly, a mysterious hand reached out from the darkness. Zilin lost control and trembled in fear. When she recognized the person, she was shocked. Teacher Wu Mai. He smiled and politely asked, "Will you go on a date with me?" Zilin naturally refused. She told him she already had a boyfriend. He gritted his teeth, clearly angry. After thinking for so long, she still turned him down. Zilin could only apologize helplessly. Wu Mai's face darkened, and he warned her, "Don't be ungrateful. I know about the live stream you secretly broadcasted." She felt guilty and could only mutter some unclear words. Seizing the opportunity, he humiliated her. "It seems to me like you enjoy being noticed by men." As he got closer, Zilin asked warily, "What do you want?" Wu Mei grinned wickedly and said, "The body of a popular streamer must be scorching hot." He laughed in delight and lunged at Zilin. "You're mine now." Facing someone as intimidating as this, she could only scream loudly. In that moment, two hands touched her shoulders. Zilin instantly felt a wave of hopelessness. She had been touched. However, Wu Mei was still a bit farther away from her, while Chu Tian, with a surprisingly seductive movement, lifted Zilin's chin. Chu Tian teased her. "How could it count if I touched you? It's just a little attention from your boss." Seeing him suddenly appear, Zilin gasped. "What are you doing here?" Wu Mei was also shocked because they were on the 7th floor. How could he have appeared from the window? The truth was, they were standing on the ledge of a truck. Suddenly, Chu Tian, in a much more familiar manner, hugged her. "A crane can reach the 7th floor, can it?" Zilin shyly tried to push him away since there were still other teachers around. Chu Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. "So, you're saying if no one else was here, I could do whatever I wanted?" A burst of energy suddenly shot out from Wu Mai's hand. Luckily, the blast only grazed Chu Tian. However, it still left a cut along the edge of his ear. Wu Mai shouted angrily, "Zilin is my woman. I saw you. Get lost." Chu Tian shook his hand casually and responded, "Zilin is my woman. Also, the light on your hand, it's the same as mine, right?" He sneered in contempt, thinking someone like you wasn't worthy of probing the Su family's secrets. Then Wu Mai turned and shouted, "Zilin, you have one last chance. If you go with Chu Tian, he won't be able to keep your father safe." Upon hearing this, Zilin immediately realized he was one of the kidnappers. Suddenly, her hand was tightly clasped by someone. Chu Tian gently reassured her, "Don't worry, I'm here." But she was still anxious, especially since even the police couldn't find anything. However, Chu Tian was confident because he had already figured it out. Wu Mai responded sharply, "How could that be? The Su family's spies are everywhere, and a high-level government ranks across the entire city." Chu Tian calmly replied, "Controlling the high-level government doesn't mean you control power. The lower classes are much more dangerous." He threw a piece of chalk, declaring that they were going to die. The chalk was about to hit, but he managed to pull Zilin into his arms just in time. In that moment, Chu Tian finally realized the chalk had landed directly on the device's junction and was beginning to spark. As the fixing pin fell out, another piece of metal also dropped. After that, the whole support system was about to collapse. Zilin screamed in panic, realizing they were facing life and death. But in the end, that scream suddenly stopped. Chu Tian had lifted her up and was holding her suspended in midair. Of course, Wu Mei never could have imagined this, not even in his wildest dreams. He sneered and explained, trying to stop the guy from getting too angry. "Haven't you seen actors in movies? The cables are cheaper than the cranes." After that, Chu Tian waved his hand and told him they'd meet on the rooftop. A little while later, Wu Mei showed up at the meeting spot. By that time, Zilin had already been reunited with her father. He smiled, squinting his eyes. "See? I told you I'd find him soon." Wu Mei was shaking with anger. Is this the power of money meeting the supernatural? He couldn't accept it. How is this possible? Clearly, Suddenly, right at that moment, a hand tapped his shoulder. Chu Tian then broke down in tears. Wu Mei couldn't understand why he was doing this. Seeing his confusion, Chu Tian explained the scene of a father and child reuniting is so moving. Pushed to his limit, Wu Mei exploded. "How dare you mock me? Tell me, how did you save her?" But Chu Tian just casually replied, "As for me, I have nothing but money." Wu Mei immediately guessed that those people had been bribed. Even so, Chu Tian pretended not to know anything about it. In the end, Wu Mei had no choice but to check his phone. The call quickly connected to the person on the other end. The subordinate politely asked, "Is there any order you need me to follow?" He immediately responded with a string of harsh words. "You ungrateful bunch, don't you follow my orders?" The subordinate didn't quite understand why they weren't listening, but Wu Mei continued scolding. "You even dare to ask if you took money from Chu Tian to release that old man. Hearing this, the subordinate immediately became cautious, turning around to check. The hostage was still clearly under their control. He scratched his head and said into the phone, "The old man is still here." Wu Mai, frustrated, snapped, "You still think you can lie to me?" However, for some reason, Chu Tian suddenly flashed a strange smile. It was then that Wu Mai realized it was a trap. The man in the wheelchair was no longer visible, but now he was using martial arts to fly toward him, snatching his phone with pinpoint accuracy. He landed perfectly, earning Chu Tian a perfect score of 100. Wu Mai, suspicious, asked, "What do you want to do?" Chu Tian calmly replied, "Of course we want to deal with you and find the rest of your hidden accomplices." At that moment, a modern tracking device was brought in. Wires were quickly connected to Wu Mai's phone, and the screen instantly displayed the search results. According to the information, the person who had just spoken was not far from the outskirts. Chu Tian eagerly pointed in that direction and ordered, "Let's go." Cecilia removed her disguise, tearing off the bulky clothes, and said, "I have to leave now." He smiled and reassured her, "Go ahead, I'll be there right away." Without hesitation, she jumped onto a nearby rooftop. Cecilia dropped down freely from the building, and soon after, a specialized suit designed for skydiving was activated. Zilin cried as she listened to his comforting words. The situation was under control, but how did she want to punish him? She whispered her wishes into his ear. Chu Tian himself felt it was too harsh. Doing that would leave him with no dignity to live on. But of course, things like that were exactly what he wanted. Suddenly, a crowd gathered in front of the teacher's office. They were shocked to see Wu Mai from a distance. Though they couldn't see her face yet, they were already mesmerized by her graceful figure. The female students' eyes lit up, and they all showed their admiration, but their excitement quickly faded. Wu Mai, still smiling, said, "Even though you like me, you should still focus on your studies." The girls looked disappointed, unknowing by the lack of familiarity. He confidently declared that he was Teacher So, but just a second later, Wu Mai recalled something. The patchy shaved head made him scream in frustration. "It's me. I am Teacher Su." The girls, tired of the whole situation, sneered, "If you're Teacher Su, then I'm Suk Su King." Wu Mai, furious, thought about Chu Tian and how he had caused all of this. The scene then shifted to a roadside restaurant. Cecilia was confused, not understanding what Zilin and the others were up to. You're lost in thought again, looking over the system chart as Dujo heads back to the company to kick off my new business plan. Cecilia doesn't get what new or business plan means. You smile slyly and say you've already found the first group of customers. Then Chu Tian orders to track down a few people from the list. Cecilia is a bit confused as to why those particular people. The first is Officer Yuan, who she's met once before, followed by the grumpy convenience store owner, and finally, Jiang Hao. Still, Cecilia quickly brings everyone together. The convenience store owner speaks first, worried that you might cause him trouble again. Officer Yuan also warns, "Last time, I was caught in a 3-level trap. Don't make me catch you off guard again." Jiang Hao, of course, keeps his usual arrogant attitude, saying, "You still haven't had enough of messing with me." Chu Tian just laughs and asks, "Do you all notice something in common here?" Jiang Hao immediately guesses it's because they've all been hurt by you, but Chu Tian denies it, saying, "No, it's not that." The truth soon comes out. They've all been teased. The three of them just stand there, statuesque, as the teasing continues for a while. Afterward, Chu Tian moves on to present the new business plan, selling wigs. The convenience store owner, irritated, asks, "Where would you even buy wigs that would be worth anything?" But Chu Tian explains that his wigs can actually change a person's personality and help them improve. Jiang Hao sneers, thinking you're committing a crime by making such false claims. But Chu Tian kept talking, standing behind the group of people. They curiously turned around to follow the direction of his hand, and Jiang Hao also wanted to try his luck this time. Chu Tian believed that Cecilia's change was due to the wig. Jiang Hao, feeling annoyed, spoke up, "A wig won't fool anyone, especially not a lover." However, Chu Tian insisted they think about Cecilia's personality before. He looked at her thoughtfully as if trying to dig for some hidden details. She seemed gentler than before, more beautiful, and even more charming. Chu Tian grinned slyly and took out something else. "Let me tell you a secret. You know why Teacher Wu Mai is so well liked." Of course, he thought it was because of his talent and good looks. He pulled out his phone and showed pictures he had found after investigating Wu Mai. When Teacher Su Wu Mai was younger, he used to be a troublemaker. No one liked him. Then he bought a wig from me, and suddenly, everyone loved him. Now that I've taken it back, no one loves him anymore. Jiang Hao was in disbelief. That person was Wu Mai. Chu Tian tried to convince him. Without the wig, you wouldn't even recognize him. He nervously patted his own shaved head. Could it be that the reason I'm not popular is because of my bald head? He continued to persuade him. Think about it. When Teacher Wu Mai had no hair, no one liked him. But when he had hair, people loved him. He shook his head, still not believing that Wu Mi had bought hair from Chu Tian's place. He kept saying there was proof, but inside, he found it incredibly funny that the other person actually believed Wu Mi was wearing a wig. Look, today when I collected the payment for the wig, the teacher even wanted to put it on credit. In the video, you could hear Wu Mi shouting, "Chu Tian, my hair." Then he continued to advertise, saying the teacher didn't mind putting it on credit just to buy something this good, so I'm sharing it with everyone. Jiang Hao thought for a moment, still feeling like something was off, but at that moment, he pushed the wig into his hand. "What are you hesitating for? Go ahead and give it a sniff. Someone like you should just follow along obediently." Then the scent made him tear up. He had even gotten to the point of asking for the product's price, but Chu Tian acted as if he couldn't bear to take advantage of his students' feelings. Jiang Hao snapped back fiercely. "Who says I don't have money? Just because you've got cash doesn't mean you can look down on others. For you, this amount is nothing." Cecilia privately thought maybe the other person was being a bit over the top. He gave a subtle signal, and the wig had been treated with a special formula. Just a little bit would do. Cecilia urged him to leave quickly since the money had already been tricked out of him. But suddenly, Chu Tian said something about wanting a race car. All three of them fell silent for a few more minutes. Then Jiang Hao's shiny sports car appeared. This time, Cecilia also turned into a stone statue like the others. Jiang Hao weakly pleaded, "Chu Tian, please take the race car." That made him feel very pleased, even though Cecilia thought he was always deceiving Jiang Hao. She even saw him thanking me. The three of them left completely satisfied, their golden hair shining. Next, Chu Tian checked the system board. The buying and selling tasks were complete, the company's location was set, and the hiring was finished. Now, only the main task was left. But then something interrupted Chu Tian's excitement. The screen showed that the task had been completed, but still at 85%, indicating an error due to the employee's position not matching the actual reality. Chu Tian was concerned about the issue with the employee's position because there were still a few people unverified, including Fan Zhuo pretending to be Xiao Long, Cecilia, and Chan Dudio. He immediately called Fan Zhuo. The voice on the other end of the line sounded obedient. "What can I do for you?" Chu Tian spoke seriously. "We need to discuss something and get your agreement." Fan Zhuo smiled proudly and responded, "Just say the word, and I'll get to work right away." That attitude earned some praise. Then Chu Tian explained what needed to be done. Fan Zhuo began to calculate that whatever it was, he would fix it. What no one expected was that Chu Tian directly fired him, then coldly hung up the phone. Chu Tian felt relieved inside, having completed the task. On the other end, Fan Zhuo was still frozen, holding the phone. He began to feel an indescribable frustration build up. The poor phone was crushed until it cracked. Fan Zhuo screamed in despair, "Why are you causing this trouble for me?"